the Muffin Man. Do you know the Muffin Man who lives on Drury Lane?
Yes, we know the Muffin Man, the Muffin Man, the Muffin Man. Yes, we know the Muffin Man who lives on Drury Lane.
Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to this fourth day in the case Massachusetts against Cara Rintala. This is the case where this lady is on trial for the fourth time in the murder of her wife. It's been an interesting case so far. Good morning, Jamie.
Hi.
Hey. When we heard the opening statements from the prosecution, I think you and I both had a little bit of, oh, this seems like a kind of an open and shut case.
Yeah.
And then my second favorite spirit animal, because I have my favorite spirit animal, and that's, of course, you know him, you love him.
While I'm waiting for this, did you, whether it's true or not, believe that Mr. Randolph had slept with your wife?
I wouldn't care.
You wouldn't have cared?
No,
Did you believe he had slept with your wife?
no,
Did you believe he slept with your mother-in-law?
probably did. Everybody has.
Said that.
Everybody has.
The judge is like, the hell did you just? Oh my god.
Yeah, Glenn is my favorite spirit animal, but this defense lawyer is close to second because she is really putting the thumb screws on the state's case. She's not letting them get away with anything, and all the witnesses so far has been, well, I can't say they have been less than truthful because it's their truth and I don't know anything. I wasn't at the scene, but every time they have said something, she said, well, have you ever mentioned this before? Nope. Well, at this trial, did you say this? And I don't remember. Well, let's read the transcript. Nope, didn't mention that. Didn't mention that. Didn't mention that. And I love her because the state is really trying to do some shenanigans in this case. And here to hear about all the shenanigans, we have Alexandra Nolan. Good morning. We have Kim. Happy Friday to you. Mads, hvordan går det? Iris. EU. And I'm not going to say that the forensic expert looks like EU. I got in trouble for that yesterday, even though I thought she looked pretty. And what mess? You have a question you can't find an answer to. She died of in a struggle and was strangulated, which means low oxygen bottom muscle ATP would be low. Do that not mean rigor mortis set in early? Well, no, because we have an expert who will testify today. The one I mistakenly said looked cute and like EU, just an older version. She will say that she can determine how long this lady was in rigor because someone told her she was cold as ice and stiff as a board. She never looked at the body. She never touched the body. No one ever took a temperature of the body. But she read a report 3 years later, and the lead investigator talked to her, but she didn't rely on anything he said. And she determines that the rigor would have been 6 to 8 hours old. But let's see how the defense lady is going to hit her with a hammer, because Mads is raising some good questions, and I'm not sure that the prosecution have any thoughts about that. They just want her to say 6 till 8 hours because then their timeline fits. 5:47. Well, I jumped on MG Law's channel at around that time this morning. 4 hours of sleep is not enough.
You're telling me. The expert had me on, and then we talked for like late into the night. Tired.
he's such a nice guy. Talking to him
Yeah.
behind the scene, and he keeps talking. That's the big problem. When we finish these streams, me and Jamie,
Oh, yeah.
I'm always saying, Jamie, I had to go make food, and then by the way, and then 30 minutes later, I'm running to the kitchen trying to make something to eat, because we always have a little bit of something, because the 3 hours we're talking to each other during the stream, it's not enough. And
No, Never
good
enough.
morning, Salvador. Hey, Christine. The Karen Reed, I know there's a hearing in the Karen Reed case today. I will be following this case today, but tomorrow is stab your day. And if it's a short one, I might do a Karen Reed stab your day. If it's a long one, I might do a long Karen Reed stab. I'm probably going to look into the Karen Reed tomorrow, because I want to know how blunt force trauma makes scratches. And who else is here? Who else is here? We have Jackpot Springs. Good morning. Good morning. Hola, Anthony Lewis. And they're not Bakerites, they are muffin tops. We have Old Line Red here. I never said she looked like an. You people, you're nasty. Yeah, we hung out at my 5 a.m. this morning, and you are not. That would be your time now, and you are at the MG. Time zones are weird. This way up is here, and Carleen. Good morning, all. Welcome all. But yeah, I'm looking forward to some fireworks today, because the forensic expert is going to testify how she knew about the rigor mortis, and how long she had been dead for the rigor to set in, purely based on reading 4 reports from the crime scene. If you were here yesterday and the day before, you heard the same testimony from the first responders and the police officers, and their testimony was, well, we touched her. And do I have my very professional explanation of rigor mortis testing? No, I didn't upload that, I believe. No, I'll probably bring that up later. But the way to test for rigor mortis is to take and shake a person's arm, and then you can tell exactly how long it's been in rigor. No, you can't. It's just stupid. And today, this lady will testify that because someone told her that the body felt cold to touch and stiff as a board, that's exactly the same as testing it with a thermometer, or doing a physical inspection of the body. I'm really looking forward to the defense. You people are just mean. Well, she has a lot of knowledge about how stiff a person can get. Yeah, please do all the YouTube things, because I forget to ask you for it, and I'm just happy that anyone shows up and watches me. But YouTube is really keen if you touch the buttons, and if you share my link on Twitter and all this stuff. Yeah, allegedly, in my opinion, in Minecraft and whatever, it's total BS, because she formed an opinion before she got the reports, and said she had only formed her opinion on the reports, not the conversation she had with the lead investigator. The lead investigator apparently made such a poor showing in the first 2 trials that they're not bringing, I think it's him back for the 3rd or the 4th, and probably that's why they jump on the paint train. The paint train was derailed, so now it's the rigor mortis train they're trying to put in here. I can see so much reasonable doubt. I'm not sure, as always, a jury, people who say they can read a jury, they're just wrong, in my opinion. I know there's a lot of people who make a big deal of money on YouTube telling you that because this jury is made up of 4 white male aged 25 to 37, 2 Asian American, and that will mean that on the solstice they will vote guilty. You can't do that, because every person is different. That's my big thing is your color, your gender, and whatever else people tend to put you into any categories. It doesn't matter. You're a person. You use your own experience, and it's about how you feel when you hear all of the evidence. So this lady, to me, she comes off as a tarot reader. I think when I watch Clumsy Clairvoyance in the morning is more accurate than watching this lady talk about reading reports she never read. At least 3 times older than EU. EU is what, 20, 22 years old. This is an old lady. Yeah, she is allowed to testify. She's not allowed to. He tried to put some limits to what she could say, and what I didn't get was he made a ruling, said it's okay for her to testify, and then she was put on the stand. She talked a little bit about her. She went to school with Abraham Lincoln. Judge Schroeder sat in the back in social studies, and then the judge after said, "Well, you have to go home and prepare for this testimony, and I think I have to go home and speculate about my ruling." And to me, that seems that he might have heard himself speaking and thinking, "Oh my God, this can be really bad if they're going to put this in an appeal again," because it was so clear she lied. In my opinion, in Minecraft, whatever we're supposed to say to not get defame anyone. When the defense asked her about stuff, she straight up lied because she said she never said anything about the lead investigator, and she said I relied on in previous testimony. So to me, and that could be because I don't understand English, she came off as untruthful.
Oh yeah.
Yep, but Salbert, it's because you are a psychic. Good morning, Miami Spice. Yeah, the struggle bus, yeah. Well, I'm trying to do my best. Well, good morning. And remember to keep your seatbelt fastened because there can be turbulence. And if there's a free bar, get a scotch for me. Yeah, and if you're joining the Mile High Club, don't record it because I saw a politician got in a bit of trouble because she earned contributions to her political campaign on Shadowbait. That's maybe not the best idea.
Morning, David, by the way.
I don't know if he's going to change his mind, but he's probably right there. You people don't understand football. You play hand deck, that's okay. In football, you have a yellow card, that's a warning. And then you have a red card, that's you're out of here. And I think he'll be sitting there with those 2 cards and say, nope, you can't go there. That's a warning. Oh, if you mention that again, she's off the stand. Because I think he realized yesterday that it can be so dangerous, especially because the defense can't ask about any of the evidence that the lead investigator put into this case, even though they claim that the lead investigator didn't do nothing. That seems very, very suspicious if he didn't talk, because he was the liaison between her and the police. Oh, that's my first stay in a Mile High Club.
Ooh,
Because I'm so big, I couldn't do anything in those small toilets.
who the heck is doing that?
Well, you just have to turn the camera so you didn't, or you have to do it on Twitch because over there it's a week suspension if you're caught doing the horizontal mambo. Yeah, Dave, keep your hands and feet inside. And everyone should go join MLS's channel so you get access to his Discord. I even made a funny. So you can follow along and see all the people around who hovers around David and when they are live. What's a green card? That's something you Americans have because you're strange. Again, you don't play football, you play handy. Yeah, yellow is you didn't hit above the knee. Hey, John. Welcome. Good morning. But no, it's going to be an interesting thing. Yeah, or you have to have the pilot tip the plane over because that's not much room in those toilets. And either I'm getting way bigger or they're getting way smaller. I remember when I had to fly to the US and use those small toilets across the Atlantic. It's not a comfortable sit, but then again, you're not out there to play Sudoku or read Instagram. You can do that in your own seat. Come on, court. You should be starting now. But it's going to be interesting how much more they have some sort of crime scene investigation expert because they're going to talk about the blood they found in the basement that they claim was that she tried to clean it up and then poured paint all over it. But why would you clean up the blood when you are on the scene? It doesn't make any sense that she would try to clean it up.
Well,
And
yeah.
again, she was sitting with the dead person. She was the one who alerted the authorities. I agree. It's a great way to try and shift the blame. But the first thing she tells the police officer when she's out of the basement is, "Oh, I'm the prime suspect because in 75 to 80 cases, the person who's going to kill you is the person who sleeps next to you, and that's why I sleep alone." But ladies, if any of you have a potential killer in you, you know where my DMs are.
Oh,
Good morning, Boomer. Yeah, but yeah, we haven't really have any crime scene evidence so far, but they mentioned it in the opening that we will see the floor light up with the luminous stuff they put on blood, and
mhm.
the basement will light up. Yes, she fell down the stairs, had head injuries. No, she didn't have any trauma, even though she had head injuries. And but I could understand it if she was unalived somewhere else and she tried to hide it and then hide the body and they found it 5 years later. But
Mhm.
here she's sitting with the dead person. Oh, now they're deleting something on the. I don't know what's going on. So I never seen that one. Prime Suspect with Helen Mirren, but I like Helen Mirren. She's a great actress.
Yeah, she is.
Hey Iris, thank you for dropping off a little bit of the Louvre. But again, you don't need to place her on the scene. You need to establish how she died. And she was strangled. We know that. And then you have to say, well, here's all the evidence. She did it. You don't need to say there was blood all over the basement. We know there would be blood there because she somehow was on the top of the stairs and ended in the bottom of the stairs. We don't know. We haven't heard anything about. They claim she was pushed or she was hit with anything. So it doesn't matter that there was blood there because we know she was strangled. And she was allowed to wash her hands and she was covered in blood and paint. So again, it's for me all these tech evidence in the Henderson case where they didn't find the bodies. It makes sense to show where the person was unalived. If all the blood was in the kitchen and the body was found in the basement, so they can say, "Oh, see, she slapped her in the head with a frying pan and then dragged her down the stairs to try to make it look like she fell down the stairs." I could understand that, but here it's clear cut. Somehow she injured her head and afterwards was strangled.
Yeah, because like showing it, like that was a good example because the bodies were moved to it.
Yeah,
They were supposed to not be there. So why would the blood be there? So that makes sense to like, oh, we sprayed all this stuff and it lit up the basement. This is not common. Okay, because where are the bodies? But this a body is there. A body was found there. It makes no difference.
yeah. They just have to look into, could it have happened
Elsewhere.
in it? Yeah, or could it have happened in the way she describes it? Could she have come home, found her dead in the basement?
Mhm.
And then they have to establish a timeline saying, well, you said you left your house at between 2 to 4. Or if you believe the last witness, he said 10 a.m., which no one else have heard. If she left the house at 2 to 4, is there a clear enough evidence that the death happened between 2 to 4? That would imply she could have done it. If you can't establish that she died at 11:30 and this lady left the house at 2, so she would have been in the house at the time of the murder, then you really don't have anything pointing to her, because we haven't heard. Maybe we still need the forensic, but we haven't heard anything about scratches on her. We heard she might have had a bloody nose, but that was one of the detectives who inferred that she needed a rag because her nose could bleed again. But he admitted on stand, if you're crying, if you're exaggerated, you can get a nosebleed. As I said, my brother-in-law has a tendency to have nosebleeds. When I was younger, my nose bled all the time. I don't know if I picked it too much or whatever I did, but I had a bloody nose all of the time.
Mhm.
So it doesn't prove anything. There's no fight marks so far that we have heard about. No one have heard these two ladies going at it. So to me, there's so much reasonable doubt in this case. Hey, genitals.
It's a
Good
really
morning.
good case. I'm glad we picked it up.
Yeah, my favorite name on the interwebs, genitals. I like my genitals to visit in the morning. Hey, lawyer's kid. It's the first time I've seen your name.
Yeah, welcome. I
Welcome,
mean,
welcome. Please join in the fun. We have a fun, interesting crew here.
seeing them around, but I'm glad you joined us.
Yeah, and hopefully we can entertain you long enough so you want to stick around. And if you participate in chat, we try to answer questions, and or else some of the crazies in chat will probably tell you, because I have the nicest little muffin tops in chat.
I love that name.
Yeah, and I think that's what I had. Or maybe I picked my nose too much. I don't know. But since my third operation to fix my broken nose, I haven't had that much of a nosebleed since then. So they probably fixed whatever was wrong. Excited hasn't seen genitals in a while. It's a Friday night. You could probably see some.
You can probably find some somewhere.
Yeah, you could probably find genitals somewhere. He's busy working. Yeah, I know a lot of kids. I can remember it from when we went to school. There was always someone having a nosebleed or something. It's yeah.
Oh yeah, sometimes I get them during that time of year when it's really dry. Like
Yeah. So when everything irritates your nose.
mhm.
Yeah, I sometimes yell genitals a bit too loud. I really like Shawshank Redemption. Shawshank Redemption is one of those movies that it's I'll just watch from here movies. Whenever you're flipping channels and you see them, no matter where they are, if they're on top of the building where he gets the beers for the guys, if you're in the beginning where they're screaming at the new fish, or whenever you come into the movie, you're thinking, well, I'm just going to spend 5 minutes watching a bit of it, and then you watch the entire movie. I really like Shawshank
Yeah.
because
good.
it's such a confined movie with so many great characters in it, and they're really well described. Something we have lost in modern filmmaking. I really like The Green Mile as well. I think the movie is better than the book, even though Wild Bill is way crazier in the book. And we talked about yesterday, my favorite series right now is Justified, but I do love me some Band of Brothers as well. That's a great movie, and Rome season 1 is also a great series, not movie, series.
Yeah,
And
Justified is so good. If nobody's seen it, highly recommend.
yeah. Hey Luna, good morning.
Hey, Luna.
And they just made a new where I think he's either in Boston or Detroit. So I haven't watched that one because I'm in the middle of a rerun of the first
Yeah.
Justified series. Oh,
Yeah.
and Deadwood. Deadwood, it's a slow starter, but it's real good.
I haven't seen that one either.
Haven't you seen Deadwood? It's the same lead actor. It's just it's how
Timothy
they
Olyphant, I love him.
who?
Timothy
Yeah,
Olyphant.
Timothy Olyphant. He plays a lawman who goes to a small city, a small town in the west, and how this small community they get up to all kinds of shenanigans.
Check out Irish's comment.
Well, the series is you can get pills.
Yeah, Timothy,
Oh,
like one of my favorites. One of my favorite actors. He's so good.
yeah, he seems so cool when he's on talk show. He seems like a cool person in real life.
Mhm.
I hate remakes that it ruins the original. Oh, a great. I need some background stuff going on, and I don't have to commit to understand the story. Chuck. I never saw it when it first came out, and whenever I'm just lying around reading a book or maybe listening to someone streaming and not really following along in the case, having Chuck on in the background, that's a great movie, great series too. Well, everything is kind of woke these days. We're getting too old.
Well, then we'll just stick to the old one. The old one is good enough. I like it.
Yeah. Mads, have you seen the movie that should tie in all the loose ends? It was a pretty good movie too. Yeah, that's the best part about both Justified and Deadwood. They have such an amazing cast. They portray the characters, and it's almost when you just see them walking, you can tell what the characters are. There is a movie, I believe, I can't remember if it's on Prime or HBO.
Hanford County Superior Court is now in session.
Oh,
Look at that.
but watch the movie. It's a
Morning.
great
Before the court is
tie-in.
Hanford County Indictment 11 ACR 0128, Commonwealth versus Cara Rintala, the matter currently on trial.
Hey, Danny. I swear there's someone
Good morning,
else.
Danny T.
Hey, Cindy. How are you?
Did I miss Cindy Lou Boo Hoot? I did. I'm doing fine.
We could please see juror number 26 and seat number 3.
Oh, jury problems.
I mean, like, they said they were having problems finding a jury because of the case. How, though?
Yeah, and the jury was instructed on day one that they should remember not to do anything on social media, and then that was jury number was it the 26 or 20? I believe it was 27, but it could be 26. So there might be an idiot who keeps writing about it on social media.
Well, why though? Because like from what they
Because
have
people are
presented,
stupid.
I don't understand how. I mean, this is a crazy case.
And Fed, the movie was really good, and even though it's made so many years later, you felt just like you stepped back into a nice pair of old pants. It just felt right. I never watched the Sarah Connor Chronicles.
Me neither. I loved Terminator 2 is one of my favorite movies. Everybody. I love that movie. I had it on VHS and I probably wore it out. I loved it. I love the
I would like to. I would love to try some of the apple pie moonshine. You can buy it in Denmark, but it's still crazy expensive because you have to import it, and it's the uh, what's the Smoky Mountain stuff. So I don't know how good it is.
Yeah. I've had it before. It'll get you.
Yeah, I have the cherry. I have the orange flavored, and then I have the pure moonshine. That's 100%. We call it 50% alcohol, and that's just mean. It doesn't taste good, and but it hits you like a hammer. Only enjoy the first Terminator. T2 is a great movie.
T2 is great. Like I love the T1000. Oh my god, the liquid metal guy is so I love that actor too. He's just kind of like a side actor most of the time that I see him and stuff, but
Yeah, but he's really and I've seen some behind the scenes stuff with him, and the way he gets into character, and and the thoughts about the way he's running and all that stuff. That's he's a great actor too. So many great actors.
I don't know. I like him though, but it makes it more you get more suspense because he's the liquid metal guy. Like he can go through he can change into anything, first of all. And like you can't hurt him. Well, it was obviously they found a way at the end, but like
And I would say the effects in that movie are better than most of the CGI
oh I know.
crap you see today.
It's
The
like 92 or is it like 92 or
Yeah,
something?
92. It was when I was still in school. But where he's lying on the floor and they use those two twins to kill off one of them. That's just how they made that. I remember watching it, and your mind was just blown away when he rises up from the floor and it goes from a checkered floor and then into a person, and it was so amazing. It's
What are you talking about, Salvador?
Salvador. He's too young to know how great T2 was.
Yeah. Weren't you born in 92?
It's well, that's and the funny thing is back then you can have big action movies and they didn't really have to be spun into 25 different movies that you have to watch each and every one, like you have with the Avengers or the new Star Wars. You have to have Disney Plus to follow 3 series so you know why this person does that. It's annoying me. I'm a bigger fan of the 80s movies from Canon where it was just a reason to launder some drug money, and I think most of the drugs was taken by the instructor because those movies were great. There was always some satire showing somewhere in the movie, and people dying in the most horrific ways. Canon was the greatest.
Jurassic Park was great too. I was just reading Fed's comment.
Yeah,
That was the first one. Oh my god, my dad bought his first big box screen TV, big screen TV, and then set up the surround sound with the big giant wall of hardware you needed and the speakers everywhere, and then invited over everybody so we could watch Jurassic Park in surround sound. And that was pretty cool because I mean, 93, I was 10, so
I remember my first
we got our
movie
little
experience.
sleeping bags and stuff, and hearing all the dinosaurs roar, it was really cool. Anyways,
Hey, Jody. My first movie experience was E.T.
Really?
Yeah, I'm that
Oh.
old.
No.
And I cried when he died. He didn't die, but he almost died.
Spoiler for E.T.
He didn't die, people. If you haven't watched E.T., I don't think it holds up as well as other movies from around that time. And watching a young Drew Barrymore, knowing that she was already getting into abuse, not abuse, but substance abuse at around that time. That's just weird.
That's
The
funny.
Muppets movie. I never watched any of the Muppets. That's
Sure.
I
I don't-
remember when they were on TV. It wasn't really me. Yeah,
Well,
if it's 30 plus years old, you must have seen it.
I don't think I've actually
Jamie
sat.
is too young to. Have you ever seen E.T.?
I've seen parts of it. I've never actually sat through the whole movie. Don't give me that face. I know.
No, I'm just
A
reading what
spoiler to Jamie.
this way up is just claiming to be the oldest person here. Well, the good thing about being the oldest is you're the person with most experience, and then you can just. I was so happy when my kids got to around the age where I can just look at them and think, why do they wear those kind of clothes and listen to this bad music? I finally felt like now I was a grown up, because I know that's what my dad said when I was listening to Two Unlimited or Informer. You know, so then we storming on lamb. I lick it boom boom down. Step the man said, rain. Lick it boom boom down. No one knows the lyrics. Yeah, she was she like 8 or 10, and she was already starting. Yeah.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Please put on the audio. Every time they take it off, they forget to put it on.
Yeah.
Sorry, I can't help it. Stop It. Two Unlimited was a great band. No, 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 there's no limit.
That's sort of the overarching constitutional principle that I think all of this comes under. The Commonwealth, and then we have a factual wrinkle. The Commonwealth has chosen not to call the lead investigator in this case, and I think it's fair to say, based on what we know, they've done this to avoid exposing his bias. Jamie McGarrian, they've done it to avoid exposing his bias, to protect their case. And that's their choice, but that's why we're in this unusual situation. Now, I think it's also clear from the record evidence we've already had that from the first moments of this investigation, the first responders who have testified and Trooper McGarrian formed a bias against Cara Rintala. And when I use this word bias in this context, I want to be clear. Everybody has a bias. I don't mean a nefarious bias. I mean a point of view. And their point of view was that his body is cold and stiff. Their point of view is that Cara has said she was home at some point this afternoon, and the five of them jumped to a biased conclusion, which may be right, may be wrong, but a conclusion that, aha, we think she did it because the body's cold and stiff and she was alive. The problem is that none of those five accounted for, were qualified to understand the scope, the nature of Ryder, and specifically, they were not qualified to understand the relevance of vigorous struggle immediately before death, and that's what created this erroneous, from our point of view, erroneous bias. The Commonwealth doesn't have to adopt that, but that's obviously our point of view. We've articulated it repeatedly. It's not a surprise. That is the bias that we are trying to expose here, and specifically trying to expose through the whole trial, but Dr. Richmond's testimony. So the biggest problem is that the first response, okay, so sorry. So Your Honor has, I think quite accurately, characterized the relationship between Trooper McGarrian and Dr. Richmond, that Trooper McGarrian is acting as a conduit. And so there's two different things, as we've all sort of developed. He's acting as a conduit for the first responders who have testified, and we've got their reports, and that is not a Sixth Amendment law. To the extent she's relying on them, the first responders, that is not a Sixth Amendment problem. But then we've all come to see, to the extent Trooper McGarrian is giving her his own observations, that does create a Sixth Amendment problem. So here, where he's a conduit, and as we've already explained, he clearly has a bias before he starts acting as a conduit, we see that it's virtually impossible to disentangle his bias at acting as a conduit, giving information to Dr. Richmond. Specifically, to what extent is he using his bias to shade the information he provides as a conduit? And it's for that reason by itself, because it's impossible, we submit that we cannot adequately defend Mr. Rintala's Sixth Amendment right to cross-examination and reveal bias in Dr. Richmond, specifically to extract the extent to which her opinion is based on Trooper McGarrian's own observations that we can't get at because they have chosen not to present him, the lead investigator in the case. So that's our first position, that what we've established so far prevents her from exercising her Sixth Amendment right, and the only remedy, is to exclude Dr. Richmond. But we have an alternative. If Your Honor is unwilling to do that, or it feels that that is not merited under the case law, we have an alternative. And our alternative is, and you sort of alluded to this, and it's more in the nature of obtaining clarification of your ruling. You said just mentioning Trooper McGarrian won't open the door to Trooper McGarrian's involvement here. So we have very specific instances. There's no point in hiding the ball. The things that we want clarification on are really three separate episodes. First, Trooper McGarrian's conversation with Dr. Richmond on the night of the incident, where he gives her, from her point of view, he asks her a question. He says, okay, if you got a body, and I'm paraphrasing, and this is her testimony, if you got a body that's stiff and ice cold and stiff as a board, could that have happened? Could that person have died 3 to 4 hours ago? And she says, oh no, that would be more like 6 to 8 hours. I think it's roughly paraphrasing. So she said, that's just a question. I wasn't giving a time to death opinion. But you see the bias there immediately. He doesn't tell her, this is a non-traumatic death. She's giving a textbook answer on a non-traumatic death. Again, I'm not hiding anything. We've argued this repeatedly. He doesn't give her the crucial information that they already had. There's evidence of a violent struggle. And that it's generally understood, accelerates the time of death. And so he gives her a biased
you got it right.
framework.
Exactly what you asked about.
That right away creates a bias in her point of view. So our question is, can we bring that out without opening the door to, well, I trust, to bolstering about relying on Trooper McGarrian's qualifications. I trust Trooper McGarrian. I find him to be a generally reliable and helpful death scene investigator. It's our point of view that should not trigger that, especially because they've chosen it should not trigger that sort of rehabilitation. Especially because they've chosen not to call Trooper McGarrian, making it impossible for us to get at his bias. The second crucial moment is in May of 2010, where there's a meeting between, I think it's ADA Steese, I think it's ADA Steese and Trooper McGarrian, where, the best we can tell, Trooper McGarrian is now acting as a conduit for the first responders, not showing, and this is very odd, but not, as best we can understand, not showing Dr. Richmond the reports or giving her the reports, but instead describing the reports of the first responders. And we understand that the ruling is Dr. Richmond can't rely on Trooper McGarrian's observations, but she can rely on the first responders' observations in the reports. But it's in this odd situation which the Commonwealth has created, where Trooper McGarrian is relaying their information, not giving the reports, but relaying the information. So what we're getting at very clearly is we are concerned that he is shading the information consistent with his own demonstrated bias. And so, if you're not going to exclude it, we want to be able to bring out that that's what happened. that Trooper McGarry, just describe what happened. Trooper McGarrian is relaying the first responders' in observations without giving her the reports. And so again, our question really is, does that open the door to any sort of rehabilitation of Trooper McGarrian? Well, he wouldn't shade the reports. He's an experienced death scene investigator. He would know not to do that. Those sorts of questions. We submit they should not be able to do that. We should have no conversation about, no questions about rehabilitating Trooper McGarrian's competence or lack of bias, because again, the Commonwealth is choosing not to make Trooper McGarrian available to us, preventing us from examining him about his own bias. And then lastly, the moment that she gets the reports a week before the first trial, which again, and that's 2013. The reports are created in March of 2010, and for reasons that we don't understand, she doesn't get them until 22 months later, if I got my math right. And that, of course, strikes us as deeply problematic. She's forming her opinion before she sees the reports themselves, relying, I guess, on the interpretation of the reports from a clearly biased lead investigator, Trooper McGarrian. So again, we want to bring that out, but we don't want to open the door to Trooper McGarrian having a reason, or it didn't matter, or there's no concern for bias here because Trooper McGarrian is such a nice guy, or such a great guy, or such a well-experienced, such an experienced death scene investigator. So those are our three sort of, for an alternative remedy, we're seeking clarification that we can pursue each of those episodes, develop the facts for each of those episodes without opening the door to rehabilitation of Trooper McGarrian. Thank you.
That's really interesting.
Just so I'm clear, that's the alternative remedy.
That's the alternative.
The primary is that
that Dr. Richmond be precluded from testifying.
If I was the judge,
least
I would
about-
preclude
I mean,
her.
I think about anything, but
Yeah.
Because she has
really
no
about time
first-hand
of death.
knowledge about
She's
it.
precluded from giving a time of death opinion.
It's an
because
appeal waiting
we
to happen.
cannot extract the extent to which her opinion is a product of Trooper McGarrian's bias, because the Commonwealth is not calling Trooper McGarrian.
okay.
Which is so shady.
Let me just address that. Your
Come on,
argument that
Early.
I should exclude all of her testimony, or at least time of death.
Sorry, I may have misspoken, and I don't mean to interrupt. Let me just be clear. We want to exclude all of her testimony, period.
Okay.
Thank you. Sorry.
All right. So that goes beyond the motion you filed and the motion that we argued. I believe the motion you filed only asked that she not be permitted to rely on any information she received from McGarrian in offering her opinion. And I think what I found yesterday, based on my own review of some of the transcripts and based on the representations of both parties who have much more information at their disposal, was that although she testified at some length about her relationship with him and sort of puffed him up and talked about his credentials, that in the end, it didn't appear as though she had relied on anything that he had done directly, and that he was merely a go-between in terms of relaying the information that was testified to by the first responders. And based on my review of her testimony, it doesn't seem to me that she strayed from those observations. I don't see any evidence that there was some additional information that sort of seeped into her analysis and ultimately her opinion, at least as to the cause of death. And I think what we're talking about here primarily is rigor mortis. That to me seemed based solely on what I've heard from witnesses. So in that respect, well, for that reason, I allowed the motion because, and I don't know that there was any objection because it didn't seem like she was relying on information. So there was no reason not to preclude her from making that part of her opinion. As far as your ability to cross-examine, I found yesterday that you would still have a meaningful opportunity to cross-examine her based on the evidence that she relied upon, and that the Commonwealth couldn't make any reference in their direct examination to Trooper McGarrion. So I guess I don't. The opinion that she's offering, the important opinion is the opinion she's offering today, based on information.
He's so soft-spoken today.
Most of which has already been admitted into evidence.
Oh.
So I don't see any basis for excluding her testimony altogether. But as to your alternative remedy, so some of which I think is if not all, is I guess it depends on the wording, is I think consistent with the ruling I gave yesterday. So there should be no mention of Trooper McGarrion during direct testimony. Then it's really up to you whether you want to bring him up and how. And that's not to say that you won't be opening a door or doors in doing so. But let's start with the hypothetical. So you can choose not to address that at all. Or if you feel that it may have influenced Dr. Richmond sort of even on a subconscious level, her later view of the evidence, that it somehow made it more likely that she ultimately opined as she did.
Good morning,
You
Shelby.
can address that with her. What was said to her.
It's a real long answer, but it's really important. This witness has no first-hand knowledge. That's why they wanted her precluded, because she is tainted by all the information she had about what the state of the body was when they found it, directly relayed to her by the lead investigator on the background of the 4 witnesses we have heard so far in this trial. And they all described it in the same way. It was cold to the touch and it moved as a unit. With that knowledge, she determines the time of death between 6 till 8 hours before they find the body. That would put the time of death at around, I have to think, that's hard, 11 to 1 in the afternoon. Cara has said she left the house between 2 and 4. So if the time of the murder is between 11 p.m. and 1 a.m. 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. I have to think in American numbers. Then she would be in the house at the time of the murder. Rigor mortis is possible to set in as early as 2 hours, according to my extensive Google education. And as Mads mentioned in the beginning of today's coverage, if you are in a struggle, rigor can set in even faster. But again, the state need to put the time of death somewhere between 2 p.m. because then they have Cara at the house. Earlier, they had a paint drying expert to do a timeline. It was thrown out in the Supreme Court. Now everything they have to put her at the scene of the crime, because she lived in the house, so her DNA would be everywhere. She was holding the body, cradling the body when the first responders arrived. So they can't say, well, she had paint on her. Yeah, because she was sitting with the dead body in her arms. They have the rigor to try and paint a timeline saying, well, she killed her, then left the house and went around trying to establish an alibi. That's why they want this lady to say 6 to 8 hours before the first responders arrived. This lady never saw the body. This lady never heard an exact temperature of the dead body other than it's cold as ice. You as cold as ice. That's not evidence. That's a um, Jamie, opinion. It's a subjective opinion how cold a body is, and that she was stiff as a board. That's why every witness so far has mentioned that she moved as a unit. And we had even had a guy testify that he did a rigor mortis test. And this is a rigor mortis test. You just shake the arm and you can determine at what time people died, according to that witness.
According to that witness.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's great.
So it's really important for the state to have her talk about when she believes she dies, even though she can't in any scientific way do that. She only has some reports, and those reports she got after she determined what time Anne-Marie died, because the lead investigator, who are not going to be showing up in this trial, except if the defense opens the doors in some strange way, he has relayed to her what he says other people have said. It's double hearsay, I believe. I don't know anything. I'm not a lawyer. But he is telling her, well, this first responder said she was cold as ice and stiff as a board. Okay, then it's 6 till 8 hours. This, if she's thrown out, they have nothing that points in the direction of time of murder. They want to put the murder as early as possible and the paint spill as late as possible to try and make it seem like she is trying to mess with the crime scene. But the defense didn't really argue to throw it out yesterday. They made a motion. She's not allowed to testify about anything about what the lead investigator said, but they really have to hammer her and said, did you form your opinion before you saw the reports? And when you formed your opinion, wouldn't you normally have to know at what temperature? How cold is cold as ice? I would go into all of the specifics because she was really weak on the stand yesterday when the porcupine hit her.
She is a feisty little porcupine lady. That's true.
I am an expert in stiffness. That's right. And hey, Robert, Mill. I don't think they get it thrown out, but I think with the ruling he did yesterday, he knows this is going to be an appeal issue if she's convicted.
Don't know that you can characterize it as bias, but you can ask about that statement, which I think she's going to say was a hypothetical. It wasn't her opinion, but it was given on the evening of the alleged murder, and so it's there.
Oh yeah, the hypothetical. This lead investigator calls her and said, "How long has someone been dead if they're cold as ice and stiff as a board?" And then this hypothetical, she was never told about anything about this case, nothing, even though she worked really well with this lead investigator and he had been at many of her autopsies. She hardly ever knew him. She said, well, 6 to 8 hours on the phone without ever touching the body and without ever seeing the body. And to me, that's some of the things that bulls drop on the ground.
And that doesn't open the door to her sort of testifying about her longstanding relationship with him.
They would never.
Or his
State is always.
So I would agree with that. It kind of depends on how you word it. But if you're simply saying, well, you had a conversation with McGarry Megarian and he asked you this question, and this is what he told you, and that's all he told you, and this was your response, and you can argue down the road that sort of planted that seed in her mind. I doubt she's going to concede that in any event, but if you do it in that way, I don't see that, again, that opens the door to all of the sort of the background information she gave about her relationship with Trooper Megarian. I'm not sure when I read her most recent transcript that I thought that was even relevant, just given that all he really was doing was sort of conveying this information between the first responders and ultimately Dr. Richmond. As to the fact that she didn't review the reports of the first responders, I think that's also a fair game. I also don't believe that she ever met with them. She's relying on their testimony or their observations. I think that then opens the door to the Commonwealth. Hold on. Simply asking her, because as opposed to just sort of it being out there, like she had no information before then, but certainly she can testify at that point that although she hadn't read those reports and although she had not interviewed those particular witnesses, that information was conveyed to her, and you can make the point that it was sort of this secondary source. Although, as I indicated, I found at least the last time she testified, it was fairly consistent with what I've heard today. But you can make that point.
So only the
And I
last time
think
she
if you just make
testified,
that
so
point, I don't think
not
that
with the first two
opens the
times.
door, to her testimony concerning why she would trust Trooper Megarian over someone else, why she would feel it wasn't necessary to look at these things directly because of her faith in Trooper Megarian. I don't think those questions open that door, if that's all you're asking. And then the third, that was the third.
Well,
No,
I think you were talking about the second. The third is that when she gets the reports a week before trial.
Okay, so that's what I was talking. So the second is
The meeting in May. Oh,
Okay,
that was all.
right.
That ruling was about getting the reports in a week before trial. Is that what you were just talking
Yes.
about? Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. That's okay.
So there was a meeting.
Yeah, in May of 2010. And the
Okay.
Commonwealth is free to correct me if I've got my facts wrong. But I think that there's a meeting between ADA Steese, who I think is the first assistant, and Dr. Richmond. I think a meeting in person in May of 2010. So roughly 6 weeks. I don't know. I'm sorry, Trooper Megarian. I don't know what I said. Trooper Megarian and ADA Steese and Dr. Richmond in May of 2010, in which, as I understand it, Trooper Megarian, for the first time, gives her a summary of the reports of the first responders. He doesn't actually give her the reports, but he acts as a conduit, giving her the information that the first responders had put in their reports. That's our understanding of where she first gets the information from the first responders, and I guess develops her opinion about time of death in this case. That's my understanding of the factual record.
She has an
And
opinion
so the question is,
doesn't see the reports till
to
3
what extent
years
can we
later.
bring out that
Yeah.
that's how this happened, and without opening the door to Trooper Megarian's ability to relay this, his value in relaying this as an experienced death scene investigator.
Sure. Again, if that's all you're asking, okay, and I want to be clear on this. If all you're asking is that, so you didn't talk to these first responders, you didn't even review their reports until I guess years later. Instead, you received information from Megarian and perhaps a prosecutor, basically just relaying that information. That's what you did. and you leave it at that, I don't think it opens the door, because if you start asking her, well, questions about whether that's her practice, and whether that's, if you start suggesting on cross that in the form of a question that I suppose so let me back up. If that's all you do, and then you can argue down the road based on other evidence, or just based on a reasonable inference that maybe that wasn't the most professional way to go about this, and that if you are developing evidence that the police were sort of focused on the
that's why this
get-go
judge has
and
such a
also
hard time of
had jumped to that
making a
conclusion,
clear statement, because
and
this is
that,
just wrong. I don't get why he lets it
kinda
in,
colored their
because if you
the
don't
way that
touch the
they
body
sort
and
of
you don't
laid
have
the information.
exact reports
that-
written
that's-
at the day of
That's
of
fair argument.
the
If
thing,
you
but
attempt
you
to
have
sort of elicit some
a
sort of
guy who
concession from,
might have talked to
Dr.
first
Richmond,
reporters
I
telling
don't
you
think you would get
what they
anyway.
might have said,
Then she
and
can
then you
start
read
to
the
talk
report
about
3 years later.
why she would trust this source over others.
And they can't
But
bring in
even then,
McGarrigan because he's
point, it's
apparently has a
her
lot of
state of mind.
problems
So
and have
anything that
gotten
Trooper
into a lot of
Megarian says to
problems
her, it's not so much
in
what
this
he's
third,
saying,
second
or how he's
time
saying,
around. So
it's
they
how
didn't
she
bring him back
interprets
at the third
it. It's
trial.
her state of mind.
And that's why I don't understand why the defense doesn't
So
get him in
you can still
to show how biased he is.
you can still cross-examine her on that bias, at least as it affected her. But if what I'm saying is if you go down that road too far, I will permit Dr. Richmond to explain why she may have relied on Trooper Megarian, taken his word for it, trusted him to provide her all the relevant information from these various reports and from these various witnesses.
Okay, that last one is the only one I want clarification on. It's a very simple question, I think. So I'm hearing you say that in describing the meeting in May of 2010, we can clearly get out that Trooper Megarian relayed the information from the first responders, and simply developing or simply eliciting that she's here, that she's in a meeting with Trooper Megarian and he's relaying the information of the first responders, does not open up the door to the Commonwealth saying, and you trusted Trooper Megarian because he was an experienced first responder, that experienced death scene investigator. That would not be allowed based on that limited.
If that is the question, it's a very sort of straightforward factual question. Yes, that doesn't, in my view, would not open the door.
One moment, Your Honor. Done. Thank you.
Judge, the only other issue I had is that, I'm sorry, Rosemary speaking on behalf of Cara Rintala. So the only other issue I have is that Dr. Richmond, on a number of occasions during trial 3, referred to trials 1 and 2 in 2. And I don't know if we can have some instruction for her to just refer to them as her prior testimony and not trials.
Okay. So before I just, so what we've just discussed is basically in keeping with at least how I view my ruling from yesterday, but I haven't given the Commonwealth an opportunity. Is there any objection to those parameters?
If the questioning is as precise
Right.
as just stated, we have no issue with that.
Okay. So again, based on the questions that you have described, nothing beyond that. So it's as soon as we start creeping past that, then we're going to be spending a lot of time at sidebar.
We understand, Your Honor. We understand.
Okay. And then as to the reference to prior trials, I think I saw that as well. Perhaps you can just remind her, and if she forgets, we can. I think there's some discussion about an instruction. I don't know if you have something along those lines. If she says trials, there's sort of a standard instruction I can read about prior trials, but the better, I think it would be better if we just could avoid that altogether.
Yes, sir. We have both.
We're all in the same sort of prior testimony, prior proceedings, something of that.
I haven't heard
nature.
anything
So
about it,
if,
and I doubt
parties
it.
Want me to read an instruction? I'd be happy to do it if just tell me what you want me to say and when.
Thank you, Your Honor. We have reminded Dr. Richmond both verbally and in writing to avoid the use of the word trial and instead prior proceeding, prior hearing, that sort.
Okay. Thank you.
And Your Honor, I have advised the clerk upon her inquiry that Dr. Richmond is ideally departing here by 12:30 to catch a flight home. It's her third day in Massachusetts. She has a lot of personal matters to tend to at home. There's one remaining issue that I think we need to resolve before she can hopefully start this morning, which is a motion that the defense filed yesterday about certain language about a reasonable degree of medical certainty. And we would not object to that motion so long as that applies to every expert who may testify in this case, including the defense experts. And I want to be perfectly clear, not only could the defense experts not say that their opinions are held to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, but they could also not say that they do not believe any forensic pathologist could conclude something to a reasonable degree of medical certainty. So long as those magic words aren't coming out of anybody's lips,
Well,
we're all on equal
if
footing
they
here,
do the testing
then
that's prescribed,
we know how to
Yeah.
avoid
then
that.
there's
Right. So I read your motion, and as a lawyer, it was just sort of passed down by more seasoned or attorneys or a supervisor that sort of had to say those words. Never quite understood what they meant, but it seemed like it was like a foundational requirement for some reason. So I think we can agree that it's not.
But they can
and
say,
the words
in
are-
my
the words get
opinion,
confusing,
and
and it just invites
say
cross-examination along.
they have
the lines, I
expertise.
think,
Yeah.
you described, or an argument that you described. So is there any objection to just dispensing, retiring that phrase as to all the witnesses in terms of their own opinions and in terms
Well,
of
I wouldn't be
their testimony
mobilizing
about
tanks the day of an
anyone else's
invasion.
opinion?
No, Your Honor.
I would have them in landing crafts during an exercise, just as the
Okay.
troop build up in Russia.
Your Honor, we have also pre-marked all the exhibits I intend to use with Dr. Richmond. I believe there was one limited objection that Attorney Scapici wanted to make to a portion of the first exhibit.
Yes, the only objection I have is that it appears that the victim's eyes are open in that photo. And I've asked that the court consider just redacting that portion of her open eyes. I know it's on the crime scene video, I get it, but I'm objecting to it, Judge.
Her eyes are open.
Okay.
And I feel differently, Your Honor. This, as Attorney Scapici said, there are crime scene photos in which her eyes are open. That's the state in which she was found. It's on the crime scene video. It would be not only inappropriate, but I think
It doesn't make sense to try and preclude that her eyes were
photoshopping,
open.
Black circles or whatnot on her eyes. They're just
And
open
most
eyes,
people who
not
die
mandatory, it's not graphic.
has open
And
eyes.
there will be testimony and other exhibits involving her
Really
eyes,
shortly after.
fetal hemorrhaging inside of her eyes, so I object to their objection.
Okay. Attorney Scapici, your objection is noted, but
I understand it.
I'm not going to
And
order
again,
that be redacted.
we are asking for the gruesome photo.
Yes.
section.
So let me know when you'd like me to give that.
I think before they start introducing the photos, Judge,
Okay.
would be the most appropriate.
Okay, so
Thank
just give me a heads up when we're about to do that, and I will give that instruction again. Okay?
Hey. Well, that's what I like to watch these trials, because we get all the behind the scenes and learn about all the arguments. It must be frustrating for the jury sitting out there and thinking, what are they talking about? But it's really important to lay the foundation for what you can do and not do. Yeah, and we have talked about this in, was it the murder case when we followed that, I believe, in some of the chats, I think in Racket's chat, that these experts they use this flowery language, and how can you describe anything? Because then you have to show what your test parameters are. If there's one standardized test, then you can say, well, according to this test, which is the leading, kind of like Dr. Curry did with AH, but or else reasonable degree. It's also, what's a reasonable degree? Is that 15, 20, 45%? I don't know.
Good morning.
Let's get started so I can go grab another
Once
cup of
again,
coffee
I will
because I'm
ask
tired.
if
Me too.
anyone had any difficulty following the
You can't
instructions I
leave if I
gave
leave.
and have been giving.
What?
You can't go get
Again,
coffee
those
if I go
instructions are
get
not to
coffee.
discuss
No,
You're
this
the eye
case
candy.
with anyone
You go
other than
first.
each other, to conduct any form of outside research or investigation, to avoid any contact with any of the participants in this case, and to avoid any and all media accounts concerning this case. If anyone had any difficulty following those instructions, please raise your hand. I see no response.
What if somebody was like, yeah, went on?
Yeah, what's the
Chairman, I
thing
recall
with
Dr.
the
Richmond.
Yes.
jury 26?
Yeah, I know. I don't know. There she is.
Good morning, Doctor.
Morning,
I would just like to remind you that you are still under oath from yesterday.
yes,
I'd like to turn your attention now to an autopsy that you performed on April 1st of 2010 upon the body of Anna Marie Rintala. Am I correct that that occurred in your Holyoke office?
correct.
And where was the Holyoke office at the time?
It was located in the Providence Hospital.
And doctor, if I could show you, starting with exhibit number 15 in this case, it's going to appear on the screen both to your left and to your right, and you can use whichever monitor is easier to see.
Okay,
Actually, Your Honor, this may be a good time for that instruction we were talking about.
Sure. And are there photos in video? Or
Just photos.
Just photos, okay. Members of the jury, you're about to see some photos that could be described as graphic. They are certainly not pleasant. I instruct you that your verdict must not be in any way influenced by the fact that these photographs may be unpleasant or graphic. The defendant is entitled to a verdict based solely on the evidence and not one based on pity or sympathy for the deceased, which might be occasioned by these photographs. Consider these photographs only as they may draw attention to a clinical, medical status, or to the nature of the alleged victim's injuries, or to the nature of the incident itself.
Thank you, Your Honor. So doctor, showing you what has been marked as exhibit number 15,
yes,
does this depict the state of Anna Marie Rintala's body as it arrived at the medical examiner's office?
correct.
And can you describe for the jury, please, what it is that we're seeing on her hands, over her hands?
At the crime scene, or at where she died, the crime scene services had put paper bags around her hands and taped them closed to preserve any evidence that would be on the hands.
And as far as what looks like a yellow ruler, or maybe some tape that looks like a ruler on her abdomen, what do you interpret that to be?
Well, I assume they were measuring something
Okay.
and taking a photo of it. I can't imagine what else it would be.
So just to be clear, you did not put that tape there.
Correct,
And for that matter, you were not at the scene where she was discovered deceased, correct?
correct.
Okay. Now, what is she lying on?
When the technicians brought her into the autopsy room, she was in a body bag, and they put the body bag on the table, and she's in the body bag.
And is this the place or the condition in which her body would have been weighed?
Yes, well, there's a portable scale somewhere else and they would have put the whole body bag and the body on the portable scale and then brought the body into the autopsy room.
So would her recorded weight have included her clothing, the bags, the tape, and the body bag itself?
Correct,
And am I right that that weight was 202 pounds?
correct,
And you recall her height being 5'5"?
yes.
Now, did Anna Marie Rintala's autopsy consist of first an external examination of her body?
Correct,
And did that include also, as you discussed yesterday, a collection of any sort of trace evidence or items that were on her body?
yes,
And then did you also progress then later on into an internal examination?
yes.
And based upon your external and internal examination of Anna Marie Cochran Rintala's body, did you form an opinion as to her cause of death?
Yes,
What was that opinion?
manual strangulation.
Can you please describe for the jury, first off, what you mean by strangulation? We'll get into manual in a second, but just strangulation itself, what does that mean to you?
When someone is strangled, hands or arms or someone's feet can do this too, but they're placed around the neck and they block the transfer of blood to the brain and to the heart.
What is it about the blocking of blood flow to the brain or to the heart that may result in death?
The blockage of blood from the carotid arteries to the brain will decrease oxygen to the brain, and the brain centers will eventually die.
Can you please describe for the jury how much or how little pressure is actually required to strangle someone to death?
It doesn't take much pressure at all to block the veins. The veins are very thin-walled, so it doesn't take a lot of pressure. The arteries are thicker-walled, and it takes a little bit more pressure to block them.
And if I understood you correctly a moment ago, are the veins conveying the blood flow to the brain?
No, the veins drain the brain
Okay. And so the artery is feeding
Bringing
blood to the brain. Okay. Now, could you please describe for the jury what length of time would the compression of the neck induce unconsciousness?
Well, it's been reported that it can cause unconsciousness in about as soon as 10 seconds.
10 seconds?
10 seconds.
And what duration, what length of time of compression of the neck would be required to induce death?
Again, it's reported to be about 4 minutes.
Now, how did you conclude that Anna Marie Rintala had been strangled to death?
From the injuries on the outside of the neck, the injuries that were on the head, face, and the injuries to the muscles inside the neck, around the larynx.
Okay. So let's take those one at a time. You mentioned some observations you made to her neck.
Did you do
and
the
face
autopsy?
area?
They said,
What was it about her neck
Okay.
and face area that you found to be consistent with strangulation?
Well, across the neck, there were several areas of abrasion or small, like scratch marks on the neck. And then there were marked petechial hemorrhages in the whites of the eyes. Little capillaries are broken. When you put pressure on the veins, they back up, and you can get these little petechial hemorrhages in the eyes. You can also get that on the face. You get the marked congestion of the face when the veins are blocked. And then when we did the internal examination, on the muscles adjacent to the larynx, there was hemorrhage in both sides, I believe left greater than right, or right greater than left, I'd have to check. But there was hemorrhage in these muscles.
And what would that hemorrhaging have been caused from?
Trauma to the neck in that region.
Doctor, on the screen, I'd like to now show you what's been marked as Exhibit 16.
I'll have to see if I have to take that one down.
And do you recognize this as a picture of Anne Marie's right eye?
Yes,
And you mentioned a moment ago that when you were examining her eyes, you observed petechial hemorrhaging.
yes.
And explain to the jury, first off, what you mean by that term, and then I'll ask you to point it out in this photo.
The petechial hemorrhage, petechial meaning tiny, hemorrhage, obviously hemorrhage. And you see it in the conjunctiva.
Hemorrhage,
where
of
little
course,
capillaries have
bleeding.
ruptured because of backup of the pressure.
So the compression of the neck and the blocking of the blood flow, is that what results in these capillaries bursting?
Yes, to the veins being blocked.
So is this petechial hemorrhaging a telltale sign, so to speak, of strangulation?
You can see it in other things, but it's always something you look for in a strangulation case.
Now, doctor, behind you over your left shoulder, there's a pointer leaning up against the rail there. Could you please point out to the jury what we're seeing in this photo as far as petechial hemorrhages?
See these pinpoint dots of hemorrhage? These are all capillaries that have ruptured.
Thank you. And doctor, now showing you the next exhibit in this photo, this case, which is exhibit number 17. Showing you a photo of her other eye. Did you also see evidence of similar petechial hemorrhaging in her other eye?
Yes.
Is that necessary to show both eyes? Couldn't you just have
Now, I'm
shown
not sure if I
them
already
in
asked
one
you this,
picture?
but what was it about this case that led you to conclude that this was manual strangulation as opposed to some object, some ligature being used?
In a ligature strangulation, you would expect to see the ligature mark around the neck. There was no ligature mark.
And when we say ligature, is that like a belt or a rope or?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
But you could still see marks from the
I'd
fingers.
like to turn your attention to some additional photos from your autopsy, starting with exhibit number 18. Now, what was it about this photo that you found noteworthy or significant?
Well, there's an abrasion on her left forehead. There's an abrasion under the chin. And then there are small scratch marks or small abrasions on the neck.
Can you say, or do you have an opinion as to what may have caused those marks on her neck?
An abrasion is a scraping off of the top layers of the skin. So something rough had rubbed across her under her chin. The abrasions are small, tiny scratches on the face.
But from a medical perspective, do you have any way of saying or knowing what caused those scratches?
Not exactly, no.
Okay. Now, if I could turn to the next exhibit, which is number 19 in this case. What are we seeing here, doctor?
I'm sorry. I sometimes go into rambles. If you're new here, I'm what's called a layman in Denmark. That's our jury system. And normally when we talk about strangulation, especially, and it doesn't have to be a person being unalive, but it can be doing a grape or anything, fight, anything, where you see the bleeding in the eyes. You would normally see some, do you call them? No, Jamie's not here. But some markings on the neck from the pressure applied by the hands, and the rough scratching on the neck. That, to me, it's not done with some kind of instrument. It should be with the hands or with the feet. But what's the rough part that's gonna leave marks on the neck? I could understand it if maybe on a guy, because we have beards and stuff like that. But to me, it seems weird. She's using her hands, and there's normally you can almost see finger marks if if they hit the right spot. But the rough scratching of her neck, to me, maybe I'm just stupid, but I don't get it. Yeah, the bruises. Yeah, I'm sorry, Jonathan. I am kind of a rambler, but because I have been in cases where we have seen evidence of choking, and normally when it's with the hands, and I don't know, in my, I'm not an expert. My experience, especially if it's a lady who's been strangled, there's often some finger marks. You can see some bruises on the side of the neck, because it's not the air pipe. You need to go out here to block it. This is not any legal advice or murder advice. And you have to press, because it's not right beneath the skin. You have to apply some force, but the rough scratching thing that's applied, but it's not an instrument. Did she have a lot of calluses, or what could do that? Maybe we'll find out if I just stop rambling.
We're looking at a close-up of the top of her nose, and you can also see some congestion of the forehead and the eyelids, but the top of the nose has a small abrasion. There's also bruising. It looks like bruising of the nose.
Which is consistent with her being found face down by Cara.
This would be the right side of her neck, correct?
Correct.
What are we seeing here?
Another large area of abrasion, and you can see there's a smaller abrasion in the middle of her chin, and then the smaller abrasion lower down.
And she's in this position
And Exhibit 21.
in rigor mortis, so she must have been in this
measured a
position
part of
face down,
Exhibit 18, but
with the hands beside her head and stuff like that.
Exhibit 21.
This is a close-up
So
of
is she
the
strangled
abrasion
from
that was
behind?
on the left side of her forehead.
Or is she
And
strangled
just so we're all clear, when you use
like
the
this
term
and then
abrasion,
turned around?
How do you define that?
Or is
It
there?
means that the top layers of the skin have been scraped off
I don't
or
know.
something
That's
rough.
weird.
For me, it's
like a
not
scraped
me
knee.
making it easy to understand
And
which
how
way
is an
she was
abrasion
facing.
different from a contusion?
Well, contusion is a bruise or a lump of blood under the surface.
So, Doctor, I'd now like to shift into some photographs.
And remember, the first responder said she had no contusions on her
moving to a
face.
slightly different area,
but
and
she had.
specifically Anna Marie's head itself. Did you observe any evidence of blunt force trauma to her head?
Yes.
And when I use the term blunt force trauma, could you please describe to the jury what that means to you?
Blunt force trauma means that some blunt object struck the head, or the head hit some type of blunt object. It means it's not a knife or not an axe. It's a blunt object, or like the ground would be a blunt object.
Except in the Karen
And
Reed
did you in this
case,
case
Yeah.
detect any
we get a lot of
blunt
scratches
force
from blunt force
injuries,
trauma.
to Anna Marie's head?
Yes.
And are you familiar with the term contributing factor?
Yes.
What do you mean by a contributing factor?
You mean like on a death certificate?
Correct.
Yeah, okay. A contributing factor is something that will make it easier for the main cause of death to occur, or contribute to the problems that the person had when they were dying.
And did you attribute the blunt force injuries to her head to be contributing factors in this case?
Yes, I did.
Why is that?
Well, they were significant injuries. She's got 2 large contusions on her head, plus 3 large lacerations that were all the way down to the skull. And there was extensive hemorrhage into the tissues underlying the scalp. So it would have been a significant injury. It may have caused her to be dazed, confused, or even unconscious.
I'd like to walk through some of those photos now, starting with exhibit number 22. Describe to the jury, please, what we're seeing in this photo, Doctor.
Okay, this is the left side of the forehead. I believe we've cut away some of the hair so that we can reveal the lump. It's a contusion, it's a lump, a goose egg perhaps, and an abrasion on the top of it.
And is removing the hair on a person's deceased body a standard part of an autopsy procedure?
If you want to expose the injury so you can get better pictures, yes.
Showing you now what's been marked as Exhibit 23 in this case. Describe for us what we're seeing here, Doctor.
This is the left side of her head, and you can see a full thickness laceration of the scalp.
And Doctor, I'd like to now show you the next exhibit, which is 24 in this case.
I believe this is a close-up photograph of that same laceration,
Okay.
and you can see there's some abrasion around the margins
Yep.
or scraping off of the tissues,
Yeah.
that red area.
Given that there's an abrasion alongside this wound, does that tell you anything about what may have caused this, or can you not tell that?
It just tells me there was a blunt trauma injury.
And did you already describe the depth of this?
It
wound?
goes down to the skull.
And what depth in terms of measurements would you say that is in general?
For an eighth to a quarter of an inch, I guess.
Now, Doctor, the next exhibit we're about to see is exhibit number 25. Can you show us, describe for us, please, what we're seeing in this photo?
We're looking at the back of her head, and she has a large V-shaped laceration of the skull, of the scalp.
And before we move on, Doctor, if I could just direct your attention to her shoulder area and also her upper
It'll be
back
interesting
area.
to see if the defense
You
talk
see
about
some
it could be consistent with
discoloration,
falling down the
some
stairs.
purplish,
Yeah.
spotting.
Yes.
What do you attribute that to?
Well, that's postmortem lividity. When the body is lying on its back for a long period of time and the heart is not beating, the blood will settle to the dependent part of the body. And it starts out as a lighter pink, but as time goes by, it becomes a darker reddish purple color. The only areas that will not have the lividity are places where the skin is touching a firm surface, and or if you're wearing tight clothing. So those are strap marks from her bra that leave the white mark because it's pressing the capillaries and they don't fill with blood.
And then, Doctor, in this photo, I think you can see sort of her mid-back area where there doesn't appear to be the same purplish, correct?
Correct.
What would that indicate to you?
That part of her body was lying on a firm surface. So the capillaries don't fill with blood.
If she's lying on her back, then why
Doctor,
are her
with respect to
arms
the
stuck in
injury
this
to the back
position?
of her head, I'd like to show you a
I don't
closer
understand that.
photo of that, which is
Wouldn't gravity pull them out?
Exhibit 26. Describe to the jury what we're seeing here, please.
Oh, well, you can see the laceration. You can see that it goes all the way down to the skull. And it also has slightly abraded areas.
When you say slightly abraded areas, what do you mean?
The skin is scraped away from part of the laceration.
And then showing you what's been marked as exhibit number 27. This would be the right side of her head, correct?
Correct. And this is again a large contusion, a lump of blood.
And then toward the upper right back side of her head, another area was shaped away, correct?
Correct.
And what are we seeing there?
That's a third laceration.
And showing you the next exhibit, which is number 28, would that be a closer up view of that laceration?
Correct.
And then the next photo, a different view of that same wound. This is exhibit number 29. Why does this photo differ from the last one?
Well, I wanted to show that there is bridging of the tissues, those small little white lines that go from side to side. That represents bridging of the tissues that's seen only in a laceration.
Why is it seen only in a laceration?
Because of the tearing of the tissues. There's not a slice or a cut from a sharp object. It's tearing of the tissues.
Now, doctor, in addition to observing these blunt force injuries to her head from the outside, did you also conduct an internal examination sort of beneath or behind these head wounds?
Correct, yes.
And what did you observe?
There was an extensive amount of hemorrhage into the underlying tissues when the scalp was brought forward.
What does that tell you? Specifically with respect to her heart at the time these injuries were sustained.
I believe there was enough hemorrhage and bleeding to show that her heart was beating at the time she sustained these injuries.
But still alive?
Yes.
If she had already been deceased and if her heart was not beating, would you expect to see the extent of the hemorrhaging that you saw?
Not to this extent, no.
Could there still be some minimal post-mortem bleeding?
It is possible for postmortem injuries to have a small amount of blood, yes.
Yeah, but there's no pressure in the system if the heart is not beating, so
Correct.
Do you
everyone
also observe any
say
swelling?
that.
Any swelling? In addition to bleeding, did you observe any swelling of any tissues? If you recall?
No.
Now, doctor, during the external examination, did you also note some bruising on other areas of Anne-Marie's body?
Yes.
And before we get into the photos, can you give the jury just sort of an overall description of what you recall about bruising on Anne-Marie's body?
Well, she had multiple areas of small bruises, multiple little collections on her arms, on her back. There were larger areas of bruising. She had areas of bruising on both front of their thighs and the backs of both legs.
Do you happen to recall how many bruises or groupings of bruises you noted on her body?
I counted about 23 clusters of bruises.
So, doctor, starting first with what's been marked as Exhibit 30 in this case, what are we seeing here?
We're looking at her legs, and you can see some area of bruising on the top of the right leg and also on the top of the left leg.
So starting with her left leg, that would be the one that's on the top side of this photo, correct?
Correct.
And then on her right leg, which is on the bottom of the screen, you noted additional areas of bruising.
Correct.
Showing you the next exhibit, number 31. Am I correct? This would be a different view from the other side of her legs.
Correct.
What are we seeing here?
Multiple bruises on the front of the leg from the knees down.
I'd like to focus in now on a photo of her left foot, showing you what's been marked as Exhibit 32. What are we seeing here?
We're seeing a portion of the tattoo, and there's a bruising on the top of the foot.
Exhibit number 33, would this be her right elbow?
Okay. And you can see multiple areas again of bruising.
And exhibit 34, left elbow?
Yes, a larger area of bruising.
This is so boring. I'm sorry.
And finally, exhibit 35.
I know
Yeah.
they're going over all the bruising, but
That'd be one of her wrists.
and they want to show each and
Yes.
every picture,
You
so
can see a
the
faint
jury
area of
gets
bruising
angry.
on that part of her arm.
But
Now, based on their appearance,
get to the facts.
did it appear to you that these bruises were caused during the same general time frame?
All the bruises appeared to be recent, yes.
Now, given the number of injuries to Anne's body as well as where they were located on her body, do you have an opinion as to whether or not some of them could be consistent with falling down a flight of stairs?
Yes, some of them could be, sure.
Now, with respect to the injuries, both to her head and to her body, is there any way that you, as a forensic pathologist, can say the order in which these injuries
Well,
were sustained?
If your
No.
ifs are this
Yeah.
dry, then
Are
you're doing it
able to
wrong,
say,
I have to say.
the length of time over which they were inflicted?
No.
Are you able to say whether they were inflicted from a prolonged assault as opposed to a quick assault?
I don't know of any way I could tell that.
Now, as part of the autopsy process in this case, and in most cases for that matter, let's start with generally, is toxicology run
Yes.
during as part of
Absolutely,
autopsy?
absolutely. We take specimens for toxicology.
And is that regardless of whether or not you suspect there may be anything in your system?
Of course,
Okay. To rule things in or rule things out?
absolutely.
Can toxicology shed light on cause of death sometimes?
Yes,
And was toxicology run in this case?
yes,
Am I correct, there were no drugs or alcohol noted in Anne Marie's system at the time she died?
yes. There were no findings.
Now, Doctor, I'd like to show you what's been marked as exhibit number 36 in this case. Do
But Fred, you
recognize
can watch
that document?
the Jody
yes, I
Harris
do.
trial. They talk a
And what
bit
is
about
This is a
lubricants.
copy of the death certificate.
And if I could also show that on the presenter, we'll start with the upper section of the report. This may be common knowledge, but just, what is a death certificate?
A death certificate is a piece of paper that you need if you're the surviving spouse to do anything legally after death. This proves to banks, lawyers, anybody that this person is dead.
And are you familiar with the terminology vital statistics?
Yes,
What does that mean to you?
they are the people who keep track of all of this, I believe.
So in the upper half of this death certificate for Anne Marie Rintala, am I correct that there's some portions of it contain biographical information, correct?
Yes, I don't fill that part out, though. Anything typed was filled by somebody else.
Okay. But based upon your knowledge of death certificates in general, you'd agree they contain information such as the decedent's date of birth, correct?
Yes,
Where they lived at the time,
yes,
the date that they died,
yes,
and family information, spouse, parents,
yes,
etc.
yes.
Okay.
Oh my God, this is boring. Jeepers
Even
creepers.
contains information about where the person.
I can't wait for the defense to
Laid to rest or
to attack her.
otherwise disposed of, correct?
Yes,
Now, about halfway
It's been going
down,
for half an hour.
underneath, the section disposition, there's a section, there's a little black box there that says certifier, correct?
yes,
Okay. And now we see some handwritten portions of the death
Written.
certificate, am I right?
yes.
Who wrote that?
That's what I filled out.
Okay. And under cause of death, you listed something for immediate cause, correct?
Correct.
And you wrote what?
That would be the strangulation.
Now, on the right-hand side, you wrote the word acute under approximate interval, am I right?
Yes,
What do you mean by that?
that there was no delay. That it happened acutely.
The strangulation?
Yes,
Okay. And then further down, you wrote blunt trauma injuries to the head, correct?
yes,
As other significant conditions contributing to death, am I right?
yes.
Scroll down a little more. Now, Doctor, I'd like to ask you a couple of questions about the lower half here. You filled in your name and your work address at the time, correct?
Yes,
You wrote in even your medical examiner's license.
correct.
Bum,
But
bum.
that's actually the license for my, for the state of
Okay,
Massachusetts.
got it. And in the box noted as date pronounced, the March 29th, 2010, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and at 7:25 PM, correct?
yes,
Now, did you pronounce her deceased on that evening at that time, or did somebody else?
somebody else.
Okay.
So she did the autopsy 6 days later. So she can't really talk about at what state the body was found. She can only talk about what lesions you can see in it. But at least she touched the body. I thought she didn't even touch the body.
Doctor, I'd like to shift topics now a bit and ask you some questions about time of death. And within the field of forensic pathology, is estimating a person's time of death something that can be done?
Yes,
Are there studies, publications, and research on that topic?
yes,
Are you familiar with those writings?
with some of them, sure.
And can you please just describe for the jury, what is the general approach that you would take if you're trying to determine someone's time of death?
Oh,
The
God.
first thing you do is figure out your window, the last time they were known to be alive, the time they are definitely found dead. So that would be your window. Your time of death is in that window.
I'm really
And then
interested
are
in
there steps
hearing
you can take to narrow
if
that window or close the gap?
someone
yes.
saying something
What
without
sort of
taking any
information
temperatures
or
or anything.
Sources would you look to narrow the gap?
Well, the police would do some investigation as far as
Here's my
mail left
problem.
at the home or
The
things like
window,
that.
like when they died,
From
you
my
don't know
point,
when.
what I would do as a forensic pathologist,
Well, no,
You have
no.
to-
She said you have a window between the last time they were knowingly alive and
Yeah.
knowingly dead. That's the
But-
window.
Yeah, but it's so hard. It's so hard to determine that, really, truly.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
you know when they're dead because you find them, whatever time you find them, but you don't really know. I don't know. Anyways,
well, yeah, you can do some testing. You can do the temperature because it's no different than when I make a dough. I need to figure out how to get, because yeast rises best at around 37 degrees because it's a living organism. A living organism exists around that degree of temperature. So you can, when I have to figure out how hot my water should be to get to this final temperature. I need to know how hot the flour is and how hot the room is, because that contributes to the
you
heat
have to know
put
all of
into it. So you have to, yeah, as Danny T says, you can get a liver temp. Well, you can wait because they're put on ice. You can still see all the bleeding and all the injuries to the body. That's not unusual. But this is the part I don't get. As Danny T said, you can get a liver temp, but to get a liver temp, you have to figure out, are they lying in a cold storage or in a sauna? Because both of those things have an influence on how fast the heat dissipates from the body. And this lady has circumstantial evidence to the temperature because it's a person saying she was as cold as ice. She was
Mhm.
cold to the touch. That's not scientific. You can't say, well, she was exactly 32 degrees and the body releases 1 degree per every 30 minutes or something like that.
Yeah.
You have to fact, as I say, I need to know how hot is my flour, how hot is my room. Then I have to add this, the water this much hot. And this lady is relying on objective testimony that, yeah, I felt her. She was stiff and she was cold.
Yep.
We haven't heard anything about, yeah, unless you have a witness or video, but the temperature rigor is really only an educated guess. Exactly. And CSI and all those, yeah, they can make anything. It's the same thing. They can do a murder trial in 2 seconds. To me, it seems, and I hope the defense will jump onto this, she has no scientific evidence about the state of the body when it was found.
Mhm.
And how long was it between the first guy touched her till the last guy touched her? She was
Mhm.
covered in paint. Does paint insulate it or cool it down? She was sitting with her in her lap. Transfer of body heat, does that do anything? This is going to be really interesting, and I can see a venue for the defense to attack her because she has no scientific readings that you can rely on. So you can never go in and say, well, your temperature reading said 32 degrees, and all of this is in Celsius because I don't do American numbers. I can't figure that out. How to you have to times it by 2 eggplant emojis and subtract a cabinet gnome. So I don't get it, but you can never replicate the results she's getting because there's no scientific evidence as far as we know. But maybe I'm rambling, and she's going to clear it all up.
Maybe.
Yeah, you can't get a liver temp. You have to take the liver temp at the scene and get a room temperature at the scene.
That's like my whole thing is like this was later on, so much later on. And it's like,
Yeah, 6 days later. So she
Yeah.
can only say the injuries to the body that have contributed to her death.
that's why I don't
That's
like.
strangulation and head trauma.
So I don't
That's-
like when you
that's
start
fair.
going this. Well, we got to have a time frame. Well, ma'am, you weren't even.
No, she wasn't even at this.
Anyways, I'm irritated.
Yeah, but maybe there is physical evidence. We just haven't heard about anyone taking the temperature of the body.
Yeah.
98.6 degrees. That's almost boiling. Stupid Yanks. Get in line with all us people.
Biologist would look at different things in or on the body, the temperature of the body, the development of lividity, or the development of rigor mortis.
Okay.
And those two things, let's see if she has anything other than a person's description of, as I said, we had a first responder who described his rigor test like this. He shook her arm while taking her pulse. That's the rigor test he did. Sorry.
We'll get to those in just a second, but let me ask you this. The farther out or the more time that has passed since someone died, does it become harder to estimate one's time of death?
Yes,
Why is that?
because there's so many variables.
And the opposite question, the closer in time you are to somebody's death, does it become less difficult to estimate their time of death?
Yes,
Given the number of variables you talked about, is it best generally to express time of death as a range?
yes.
Are you able to give a precise time of death or a time range within which someone died?
You should never give a precise time of death using these methods. You're going to just give a range.
And your range
Dr.
sucked.
Richmond, in this case in particular, the case of the death of Anne-Marie Cochran-Rintala, were you, based upon your training, your education, your experience as a forensic pathologist, based upon your familiarity with topics and research on time of death, were you able to form an opinion, your opinion?
My
as
first
to
question: How hot was
timeframe
the
in which
body
she
when
died?
she was found?
Well, the time frame?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And I'd like to ask you for that opinion in relation to the time Anne-Marie was discovered dead on the evening of March 29th, 2010. Is it your understanding that she was discovered deceased around 7:15 p.m.?
Yes.
How long do you estimate that Anne-Marie Cochran-Rintala had been dead for by that point?
Based on the information that I received
Yes.
in reports.
And your own examination of the body, yes.
Yeah, but
Well,
no.
At the scene, they had lividity development plus well-developed rigor mortis.
So based upon the information that you received,
She's
what
not
is your
gonna.
opinion as to
She's
how
very careful too.
long before
She
was
knows
found
she's
dead
going to be
that she
attacked in a
died?
minute.
Well, based on well-developed rigor mortis in all the extremities, and the coolness of the body and the lividity, I would put her time of death at 6 to 8 hours prior to being found.
And could it have been more?
Yes.
Could it
Are
have
you
been
able
less?
to achieve, or do you have an opinion with any absolute precision or certainty as to what time she died?
No,
Are you able to pinpoint it to a specific time on a clock?
no.
Now, Doctor, you've
Exactly.
already
What is
touched upon
coolness?
this, but I'd like to discuss with you the basis for your opinion. Am I correct that in forming your opinion,
Objection, Your Honor.
That's leading.
Overruled.
Doctor, am I correct that in forming your opinion, you relied upon observations and descriptions of Anne's body by 2 police officers who were on scene?
Yes,
Did you also rely upon observations and descriptions of Anne's body by 2 paramedics who were on scene that night?
yes,
Did you also have the opportunity to review photographs from the crime scene?
yes,
Did you also review some information off of Anne Marie's cell phone?
well, I never saw the cell phone, but I saw information about that,
What?
yes,
Okay, but you did also take that into account, am I right?
yes.
But what does the cell
Now,
phone
you
prove?
mentioned
But I
that,
guess
That's
her
a
being
prejudice.
alive.
factors you took into
I know.
account.
The
Boom
cell
her,
phone,
I'm not
I
sure.
assume, proves when she was alive, I guess, is what she's
Yeah, but
or dead or whatever. I don't know.
Jamie, I know you never leave your house. I leave my house sometimes. Someone might say, "Oh, there's his phone. I'm gonna do this." So there's cell phone activity. My screen just turned on.
I mean,
I
how
did it.
many times have we thought poor little Lefty had met his demise because he took a nap
Yeah,
in the last couple days? I mean, that it happens. People, it's crazy with the cell phone stuff.
yeah, and this thing, she's relying on subjective evidence.
Mm-hmm.
She doesn't have she doesn't have any hard facts till anything. She watched some pictures and she looked at when the phone. So if I give you my you are now a criminal investigator, and you come to me and say, can you determine when she was dead? Yeah, I need a window. When was she alive? Well, she touched her phone the last time at 10:30, so we know she was alive at 10:30. Then you automatically start your window at 10:30. She said that, but
Mm-hmm.
you have no proof that I was the person touching the phone at 10:30.
Yeah, you don't have any proof that that is what is happening. Like, you don't know who has the. I mean, you don't know if her. Well, let's say her, because then they'll be like, "Oh, well, you need to unlock her phone." Okay, but you don't know if her phone was sitting there unlocked. You don't know if. It's so stupid. I can't even.
Yeah, and that's my problem with this. You're relying on how a body felt to someone. You're not relying on hard evidence, but you're given a window based upon a physical object that if you and I were in a relationship and you were in 2010, did we have codes on our phone? I'm not even sure we had lock screens on on our phones back then. You
God.
could borrow my phone, or I could unalive you at 2 in the evening, in the morning, and then I could run around with your phone and play Snake on it all day. So the window will be screwed.
Yeah.
And I can try to call your mom and hang up as it go through, just to try to cover up. But she's prejudiced by saying, "Well, she was alive at 10:30. We know that. How? Yeah, well, her phone wasn't
She had a
used."
BlackBerry, remember? So no, there wasn't any lock code on her phone.
Yeah, that's right. It
Blackberries
was the
didn't have-
BlackBerry.
Yeah, because they had that pink. Yeah, it had like pink case or whatever. So, or yeah, and it's 2010. 2010. I think we had all those phones that were just open to the public.
Yeah.
This. Yeah.
Yeah, we didn't even have face cams back in 2010. It's and again, yeah, there was a BlackBerry. No, yeah, it was BlackBerry.
I do believe
So
so. Thinking, oh, I love that. I used to have one, and I had a pink case on it too.
yeah, so again, you're giving her information you can't verify, and again, you can never verify how cold the body was when the
Well,
EMTs touched it.
Did I miss that where the EMTs were even taking the
The
temperature
first
of the body?
EMT, the first EMT did this. He
Yeah.
checked for the pulse and wiggled her arm and determined it was in full rigor. That's why I draw this clock, because that was a stupid thing. He said it was a rigor test you do automatically when you take the pulse. And he did this and could determine that she was in full rigor. How?
But she's saying, but his stupid question was based off of the paramedics, the very experienced paramedics and police staff, like they told you that the body was cold. But did anybody actually like take the temperature? Did they take any temperatures? Did they?
Well, they didn't mention it now, but maybe they will. Sorry, we get sidetracked, but I'm just angry because this is
I know.
all subjective evidence.
It
And
is.
back in 2010, Wi-Fi, I believe, was it was a thing, but not everyone had it, and it was kind of shoddy. And back then,
Gosh,
you didn't.
2010? Yeah, I don't even think I
Oh,
had
you had.
Wi-Fi back in 2010.
I know when I was elected in our city council, we got an internet connection. That's the first time I had a proper Wi-Fi connection because they paid for the expensive stuff. So yeah, and that was 2014.
Oh my gosh.
Well, let's go back and see that we have all been talking about stupid things because this lady has made the most scientific of the scientifics ever.
Was rigor mortis, am I right?
Yes.
What descriptions of Anne's body did you find most significant? Well, actually, let me just back up for a moment. There's been some discussion of rigor mortis in this case, but I haven't asked you yet what your understanding of rigor mortis is.
Well, rigor mortis begins after death. When the body dies, it no longer makes what's ATP, which is a chemical in the body, and the muscles become acidic. And when that happens, little myofibrils will complex together, so they become stiff and won't move. This happens in all of the muscles after death, but smaller muscles, you can see it sooner because of the less volume of the smaller muscles. So the first area you would notice rigor mortis is in the jaw. The jaw, you can't be opened. And then it spreads down to the arms, the shoulders, and then the legs.
Now, by the time rigor mortis has reached a person's wrist, elbow, and shoulder, what condition would you expect the jaw to be in?
Oh, definitely. It would be locked in rigor.
And then eventually rigor mortis is seen in the larger muscles in the body as well?
Correct.
And what would you consider some of the larger muscles to be?
The thighs, the legs.
Now, returning back to Anne Marie's body in particular, what descriptions of Anne's body did you find most significant in forming your opinion?
There was a time during the investigation where the two officers had to turn the body to get the defendant from being under the body. So they were rolling the body and they noticed that everything was locked in position. It was like rolling a log. There was no give, no flaccidity to the muscles. They were all totally stiff.
Yeah.
And did you also rely upon or review the observations of at least one of the paramedics who was there?
Yes.
And what was it about the paramedic's description of the body that you also found significant?
He also found the upper arm to be quite stiff.
Quite stiff.
Yeah. What is that?
Now,
really
what
mean?
significance, if any, did you place
On a scale from
in
1 to a million,
descriptions
how
of
much is
Anne's
quite?
Yeah,
arms
quite to you.
actually being suspended or not lying on the ground?
Very important, I believe,
Why?
because when the body was rolled over, it had been found on its stomach and was rolled over onto its back. The arms remained up and in an anti-gravity position. They didn't flop back to the ground. They stayed upright.
But the blood pooled on the back.
Now, is the degree of stiffness or the progression of rigor mortis that Anne was in when her body was found, is that typically seen less than 6 hours after death?
No, I don't believe so.
But you didn't see the body,
But
so you don't
didn't
know.
see the
Now-
body right away. Like,
Based upon your training and education and experience,
you saw the body 6 days later.
Boom. This is the problem. This testimony is 2 police officers and 2 EMTs describing the body after the lead investigator called her on the night of the murder, saying the body is cold as ice and stiff as a board. Then the lead investigator talks to her and explains that the first responders have told him that there was quite some stiffness to the joints. She weren't at the scene. They have written down and have testified that she was cold and she was stiff. That's why I, for the fun of it, made the rigor test where he said when I touched her to feel her pulse, I moved her arm to feel the rigor. That's not something you do, and it's not. How can you replicate that in the defense, saying, "Well, was it this much movement or this much movement or non-movement at all?" It was quite stiff. That's what Sal calls a great Saturday night if he's quite stiff. This is pure subjective experience from people at the scene. And what is cold as ice? If
Yeah.
you don't put a thermometer in the liver, because the liver holds the body heat most precisely, how do you know? And again, we discussed this yesterday. Jamie and I feel heat and cold a different way.
Yeah.
We could have 2 completely different. Oh, Jamie goes away. She's
Oh,
back.
sorry.
2 different. We could have
My Wi-Fi.
experienced. Yeah, your Wi-Fi. But we are 23 people watching this stream right now. 3 on Rumble, I believe, and each and every one of us could touch the same body, and we would have 28 different explanations as how we felt the body. It's subjective.
Yeah. You know how people touch the forehead to see if you have a fever?
Oh.
I am terrible at that.
Hey, Paige. Yeah, my mom did it. I could never do it with my kids. I always
know,
looked
and
if they were
My mom
if
would
they
be
were
like,
red in the cheeks.
feel my forehead, and I'm like, I don't know. It feels like a forehead. I don't know what to tell you. Like,
Yeah, Paige, I didn't see it because I've been covering this case. I will probably be doing it tomorrow at Stab Your Day.
I was gonna tell you to tell Paige that because we're talking about it. If
Yeah,
it's good,
and
we're definitely probably gonna look at it for Stabber Day. I'm sure.
yeah, because we don't really don't have anything. Young men will probably send me some blue balls, but else I don't have anything lined up as always. We swing by the seat of our pants. Yeah,
Yep.
stiffness could be anything, and it was not documented other than they wrote it in the report. She was quite stiff, but
What?
again, what's
Sorry.
quite stiff? Fedorowski, that's a dad joke if I ever saw one. Oh, they were cheering in court. That seems weird.
Yeah, I know. Now I'm like intrigued.
Exactly. And a person living in Florida touching a body on the first day he or she arrives in Massachusetts in winter, compared to a person living in Massachusetts for their whole life. It will be really different because
Good
we all
example.
know that
My best
some
friend lives in Florida and she thinks 60 degrees is like ice cold freezing. 60
yeah, that's
degrees
summer.
here is like shorts and like sandals weather in Michigan.
Yeah.
So, big difference.
But again, let's see. I'm sorry, we're behind today. We're missing Twisted to yell at me.
And how long does it take for rigor to typically reach its maximum point?
The maximum point would be about 12 hours.
And once rigor has reached its maximum point, give us some sense of how long it may stay there, may stay in that state.
Typically, it stays for another 12 hours.
And then what happens?
Then it slowly decreases because you're moving into decomposition. So the body would become flaccid again.
Sorry,
Now,
Sal.
you said already that time of death estimates
I don't think he's watching
should
this.
be expressed in ranges.
Hey,
correct?
Swap Up.
Yes.
And
Haven't seen your name
are
before.
there variables that
Welcome.
can affect the rate at which rigor mortis progresses?
Absolutely.
What are some of those variables?
Very hot weather could bring on rigor sooner. In Florida, where I'm living now, rigor can come on much quicker
Oh,
because the
this is the
temperature is so
basement. Is
hot.
there furnace in the
It
basement?
comes on quicker and goes away quicker.
Yeah. What?
Cold can
Cold wasn't
make
that.
it slow down. It's like a chemical reaction. Anything that will speed up a chemical reaction will speed up rigor, like heat. And anything that would slow down a reaction, like cold, would make it longer to develop.
In addition to the environment around a body being hot, would a higher body temperature also accelerate rigor mortis?
It can, yes.
And if you've been
Conversely,
fighting,
would a lower body temperature tend to slow down?
do you have a higher
Yes.
when your body's filled with adrenaline?
Now, what about the amount or the type of clothing that a person may have on them at the time they die? Could that also have an effect?
Yeah, I know. That's the worst
I don't think
Austin
so.
Powers movie.
For example, if one person dies wearing a fur coat, the other person dies dies naked.
Wearing a fur coat's a pimp.
Might that have any effect on you mentioned temperature or
Mhm.
environment being a
Yeah.
factor?
Basis?
Leading question, assuming facts, not evidence. Not hypothetical.
Can I rephrase it?
If you can rephrase it.
Yes, doctor, if two people in the same environment died, one wearing a fur coat and one naked, do you have an opinion as to whether that may affect the development of rigor?
The one in the fur coat might be warmer, and then rigor might come on sooner.
So it really has more to do with the temperature of the body?
I would think so, yes.
Okay. Now, what about strenuous physical exertion before death?
It's reported that that can increase rigor mortis.
Why would that increase it?
Because what happens with the physical activity is that you use up your ATP in your muscles. So then there would be less ATP there when you died.
And what intensity or duration of physical exertion are we talking about?
They describe it as severe, extensive physical activity.
I agree.
Now, two of the descriptions of Anne's body that you relied upon, or among the descriptions you relied upon, came from paramedics, correct?
Yes.
Now, why is it that as a forensic pathologist, you would rely upon or place weight in descriptions by paramedics?
Well, paramedics, experienced paramedics, go to all death scenes, or they're called to the scene when people are unresponsive. And it's their duty to determine if they're going to resuscitate the person or if they're going to pronounce them dead. So they would need to know all of these fine factors.
I don't know if Nick is going to cover that or
Experience as a
if
forensic
Dave has
pathologist,
landed.
Do you want
They're the
to-
ones who
paramedics
had
to have
covered that
training or
case.
education in
Ooh, I'm gonna have to put it on the other screen. I'm curious.
Overruled.
I would think that would be part of their training, yes.
As part of your work in conducting autopsies and death investigations, would you request and review paramedics' run sheets?
All the time, yes.
And when I say run sheet, what is that?
Well, that's their call about what they did at the scene, being called to the scene, what they did.
And in your experience as a medical examiner, do you also receive and take into account information from police officers?
All the time, yes.
Yep, but still, you can never replicate those
Doctor, I'd like
answers.
to shift away from rigor mortis for a moment and mention body temperature or temperature of the surface of the
Oh.
body. What descriptions, if any, do you recall that were made
Descriptions
by the
are
first
not
responders about
facts.
the feel of Anne's body?
I'm sorry.
Temperature.
They said that she felt ice cold.
And as a forensic pathologist, do you put much or any significance in that?
Not a lot of significance, no, because,
Not a lot. Why?
well, because the skin is exposed to the air and the temperature would get colder in a cold environment quickly. So it wouldn't be that accurate as far as time. It just tells you that she's been dead for a while because she's ice cold, but I wouldn't be able to give you a time frame.
Is there a general rule of thumb in terms of how many degrees of body temperature a body would lose per hour after death?
Yes, there is.
And what is that?
You lose about, well, actually, your temperature, body temperature can actually rise a little bit right after death. But then you lose about 1 to 2 degrees
Per hour?
per hour.
I believe you said there are, again, many variables that can affect this, correct?
Yes,
The surrounding environment,
yes, the temperature of the body, absolutely, yes,
what the person may have been wearing.
yes.
What about the surface upon which somebody is lying after death?
She was lying on a very cold cement floor, so that would cool the body.
And the fact that she was lying on a cool cement floor, could that also slow down rigor mortis?
Yes.
Now, are there other more precise ways within your field that you're aware of to measure core body temperature?
Yes, there are reports in the literature of ways to do that, yes.
And can you give us a few examples, please?
In the literature, they suggest core body temperatures, but in order to get a core body temperature, you have to put a thermometer into the brain or into the
Hey,
liver,
Stephanie Plant.
or an 8-inch thermometer has to go up the rectum.
In your experience as a medical examiner, have you ever done those things at a crime scene?
I've never done those things, period.
Okay. And would you do those things at a crime scene in particular?
No.
Why?
Well, you'd be causing damage to the body, and you haven't done your autopsy yet, so.
And why is not causing damage to the body before an autopsy important?
That's a surprise that these two people were acquitted. But I don't know enough about the case. I don't know anything about the political climate in the U.S. I shouldn't opine on it, but it seemed like with all the shenanigans going on in the U.S. The last couple of years, some people got railroaded. So if it's good or bad, I don't know. But I'm always happy when people are found not guilty, because that meant they didn't do a crime. So. And I'm not sure if Nick or David is showing it, but
It already happened.
oh, yeah, because Chrissy says, "Hey, Chrissy," that they were acquitted. But as I said, I don't know enough about the case. I just watched part of it when I was on with David, and it seems kind of like they were throwing a lot of stuff in that wouldn't be accepted in a normal trial, because there was They went by the house as a clear sign of something. But I won't opine on it because I don't know the facts in the case. But congratulations being found not guilty. That means
Yeah.
that the state didn't prove their case, and
Definitely. I just pulled it up to see, and oh, they're just like bawling, crying. It's so sad. I like
I
those
can
out.
understand that. Is that 4 people who have been found not guilty, and the only people who are in prison are the one who pled guilty or who made a plea deal.
Yeah.
Well, it's not this case, and
Okay.
so yeah, and Fed, you and I live in a socialist heaven, so we back the government. They are always right.
Oh,
You as a forensic
he's
pathologist.
crying.
Because you could cause traumatic injuries, and then it would be difficult sometimes to explain that.
No, because you would say we put a thermometer in the
Now,
liver.
with respect to, as compared to the degree of rigor mortis in Anne's body, and the described temperature of her body, which did you rely upon more in estimating her time of death?
Rigor mortis.
If all you had in this case was a description of Anne's body being very cold or ice cold, would you feel comfortable rendering an opinion about her time of death?
No.
Now, you mentioned earlier that you also took some
But you never
additional
tested the rigor.
external information, that you became aware of some external additional information around the circumstances of her death, correct?
Yes.
And I'd like to ask you specifically why it is that external information from investigators, from those on scene, why would you even consider that relevant to what you're doing?
Because I think it is very relevant. It gives you a picture of your window. If you know the last time they did something, the last time they were known to be alive, the last time they spoke with someone, that starts your window, and then you have when they're pronounced dead. So you need that to have your window, and then you determine to the best of your ability the time of death in that window.
But to the best of your
Would you
ability,
consider it
relying
relevant if
on
there were
another person's
changes
testimony.
in a
Exactly.
person's pattern of behavior?
I'm sorry.
You
I think
could,
this is
yes.
so stupid, this woman, what she's doing.
Such as mail still being in the mailbox?
Yes.
In this
Mail
case, did you
yeah.
have the opportunity to review some cell
Yeah,
phone
Wait.
I don't
activity
know.
on Anne's phone the day she died?
Did she just
That's-
say because there's mail in the
And when you
mailbox?
reviewed those records, what effect, if any, did it have
I
on your
don't know.
opinion
I haven't gotten my
that Anne
mail
had
since
died
yesterday.
6 to 8 hours or more before she was found dead?
Sorry, what?
I'm so confused.
Yeah.
I think she said 6 to 8 or more. That's what my notes indicate. But
Thank you.
it's really up to the jury to decide what the witnesses said on that point. Go ahead.
Thank you. Doctor, what effect, if any, did that cell phone activity have on your opinion?
I know.
Well, it seemed that she had stopped doing what she'd been doing a lot of texting and calling all morning long. Then all of a sudden it comes to a complete stop.
Maybe she went to sleep.
Yeah.
And do you recall
Her
the
phone
time-
were in her
do you
bed
recall
under the
12:21
pillows.
PM?
Sustained.
So after you reviewed that cell phone activity, let me ask you this, doctor. Did you place more significance on the cell phone activity than you did on rigor mortis, or more on rigor mortis than cell phone?
I think the rigor mortis was more important for me, but the cell phone activity, lack of activity, certainly gives you a good beginning for your window.
Now, doctor, if I could return to an exhibit in this case, I believe it's the last exhibit that was up on the screen a few moments ago, which is the death certificate that you completed in this case, and specifically the lower half of the report. If I could please zoom in on so, doctor, I'd like to ask you a question about box. I believe it's 37C, approximate time of death, correct?
Yes,
And did you write something in that box?
yes.
What did you write?
UNK for unknown.
Okay. And when did you
I've been
complete the
checking
report?
my mailbox
The
this week because I
April
ordered
2nd,
something.
I filled out. the
Normally,
death
I check it
certificate.
maybe once a week.
I'm usually like every 3
So,
days.
when
Oh
you
crap!
wipe
Better get the
the
mail.
note in that box
Because
on
we have
April
we
2nd,
have an electronic mail
2010.
system, so everything from companies
Because
or the
I always
government goes
put
to your
unknown unless
electronic
I
mail.
know an exact time of death.
I think this
And
doctor
in
has
your
been deceased
experience,
for a
how
couple of
many death
years.
certificates have you filled out in your career? You said you've done about 5,000 autopsies.
Yes,
Would you complete a death certificate in all or mostly all of those?
all of them.
Okay. And have you ever put a time range in that box?
No,
Why?
where I was trained in Cook County and again in Massachusetts, the people who trained me taught me how to fill in the death certificate. We've never put in a range on approximate time of death. It was always either unknown or a specific time.
So it's
Now, you
unknown.
also wrote an autopsy report in this case, correct?
Yes,
Where does
And
it
is
say
there a
unknown?
section in
Oh,
the
there,
autopsy
unknown.
report which covers
UNK.
time of death?
I don't think so, no.
Come on, let
I don't
Porcupine
know what
Woman
it is,
get
but
to
I'm
her.
gonna
That's the
speculate what
standard
it
part
like.
in every autopsy that you conduct.
No,
Is time of death relevant in every case that you investigate?
no.
It is when you want to pin it on somebody.
Can I have a moment, Your Honor, please?
Yeah, Porcupine.
Come on, Rosemary. I hope you got all your coffee in and your sleep.
Porcupineness isn't as porcupiney today.
Dr. Richmond, just a few last questions.
Feisty.
Are you familiar with, or do you know of, a Dr. Thomas Andrew from the New Hampshire Medical Examiner's Office?
I know his name.
Have you met him?
No, I have not.
Have you ever spoken with him?
No, I have not.
Have you ever spoken with him about this case?
Oh, absolutely not.
Dr. Richmond, thank you very much. That's all the questions that I have for you.
Okay. Nick is doing the waiver verdict at 1:20 if anybody wanted to know.
Good morning, Dr.
Good morning.
How are you?
Fine. How are you?
So I just had a couple of questions for you. I think you just said with respect to the cell phone activity that you considered for your window, the window of opportunity.
She has more than a couple of
In
questions.
terms of determining time of death, that you found it significant that the cell phone activity had stopped, is that right?
Yes.
Did you see crime scene photos where there was a cell phone found in a bed where Anne Marie Rintala lived?
No. Not that I'm aware of, no.
Would it have been as significant to you that there was a lack of phone activity if you had learned that Anne Marie Rintala worked nights and slept during the day?
I don't think so, no.
It wouldn't have been significant?
Not in this case.
Why?
Why?
Okay.
Why?
So, did you consider the possibility when you were getting your window that Anne Marie Rintala could have been asleep because she had worked the night before? Did you consider that?
Nope.
Nope.
No.
There's
Now,
sounds like the ambulance outside.
in terms of,
I mean, come on, guys. Like, no.
the information that you talked about with the prosecutor. I just have a couple of things that I want to bring up. It's fair to say in this particular, you've done thousands of autopsies and responded to thousands of scenes, is that right?
No.
Do you not go to the scene?
We do not go to the scene, so,
Okay. So you did go to the scene in this case?
correct.
Okay. So you didn't see the body as anybody else saw it, or as any of the paramedics or the first responders, the 2 police officers saw it that night because you didn't go to the scene?
I didn't go to the scene, no.
Okay. And do you know from the time that the first responders and the paramedics viewed the body until you got the body in your lab to do, or your hospital to do your autopsy, how much time had passed, do you remember?
She died on the March 29th. It was pronounced dead at 7:35,
When did you see her office?
and then her body got to the morgue the following day about 3 or 4 p.m. But the
Okay.
autopsy was not done until April 1st.
And that's not unusual that it would take a day or two to do an autopsy because there's a lot of other things going on, is that right?
We usually try to do homicides sooner than that,
Okay.
but there seemed to have been a delay.
Oh,
I'm sorry, say that
There
again?
seemed to have been a delay there.
Okay, do you know what the delay was in terms of why the body couldn't have been brought earlier, to do the autopsy earlier?
Well, I know why it couldn't have been brought to the morgue sooner. They were doing a complete crime scene investigation that took that long.
So you don't necessarily need the body to do a crime scene investigation, right? You get the body out of there, get it to the morgue, get it to you to do an autopsy, and still do a crime scene investigation, right?
I don't think so. That's not the way many of these cases are handled, but I'm not a crime scene investigator
what
person.
are you talking about? They
Exactly
just
what
leave
their
that body
criteria
around for a while
Okay, you don't know.
until they're
Yeah,
done?
because you really
Now,
need the body
In terms
to do it,
of,
see if there's any blood spatter. That's you can't move the body.
information
They always let the body lie there for days.
that
While
you,
they're trying to figure everything out.
it's gonna say that you had a conversation, on the night of the 29th, where Trooper McGarren asked you your opinion about whether or not a body that was stiff and cold could have gotten in that, in other words, an opinion about how long it would take that body to get stiff and cold. Do you remember that conversation?
Yes,
And do you remember telling Trooper McGarrian that it was 6 to 9 or 12 hours? Do you remember what you said to him?
he asked me how soon a body could become cold as ice and stiff as a board. And I said 6 to 8 hours
6 to 8 hours.
or more.
So that's
Yeah.
her opinion before
Maybe
she ever saw
told-
the body.
The prosecutor on direct examination that you relied on the information that you received from the paramedics and the 2 police officers that were on scene, the 4 first responders, is that right?
Yes.
And you didn't speak directly to them, is that right?
No, I did not. No.
Okay.
Well,
And then could I ask you the next question, which is, do you remember having a meeting with Trooper McGarrian, with an assistant district attorney, in May of 2010, where some information was communicated to you about what the first responders, those 2 paramedics and the 2 police officers saw that night?
I have a vague memory of meeting with the DA and Trooper McGarrian. I don't know, it was sometime after the autopsy. I don't know exactly when it was. And I don't remember what we discussed, no.
You don't remember anything about what you discussed?
Well, I imagine we discussed the case, but I don't remember exactly what was said, no,
Did you take any notes?
no.
And in terms of this meeting in May of 2010, you got your description of what the first responders saw, including the paramedics and the police officers, from Trooper McGarry, is that right?
I'm not sure who gave me that information, if it was the DA or the trooper.
But the DA certainly wasn't at the scene, right?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, so, when you had this conversation in May, let me just get the exact date. At the moment, you're in.
Take your time.
Dr. Richmond, do you remember testifying previously on March 1st of 2013?
I don't remember the date, but I do remember,
Prior testimony?
correct.
Okay. And you said when I asked you about this meeting in May, you didn't know the date. I'm going to ask you this is page 154, lines 12 and 13. Could you read those lines to yourself, the highlighted lines on that page, please, Doctor?
Yes.
Doctor, does that refresh your memory as to whether or not the date of the meeting that we were just talking about was May of 2010?
Well, that's what it says, but I don't remember the meeting.
But you have no doubt,
specifically.
no reason to doubt the transcript, right?
Correct.
Okay. And do you recall reviewing reports on that day of May
Reports.
10th of 2010 from the first responders, paramedics, and the police officers?
No, I don't.
Okay. And it was during this time, May of 2010, that you had formed the opinion that the window of death was sometime 6 to 8 hours? Or had you already formed that the night of the incident?
Well, I didn't form it at the night of the incident because I didn't know the information at
Okay,
the time of her death, no. So it would have been sometime later that I was given information.
so after you were given the information about the 4 responders, the 2 paramedics and the 2 police officers,
Correct.
that's when you formed your opinion of the time of death, is that right?
Correct.
And you recall having this meeting in May, right?
Like,
You don't recall the date, but you know what happened.
I know there was a meeting, yes. There may have been several meetings, but I know there was definitely one.
Okay. And you don't remember at this meeting ever getting any reports from any of the paramedics or any of the 2 police officers upon whose opinion you relied, is that right?
I don't remember getting reports, no.
Now, is it fair to say in this case that you actually never received the reports of the 2 paramedics and the 2 police officers on whose description you relied until February 25th of 2013?
I can't remember when I got the reports.
Just a minute, Your Honor.
Yes, take your time.
Let's start with,
Oh my God, stop it.
Was it the right way around this time?
Yes.
Did I
Yeah,
figure out how to do it?
you had it right.
She doesn't remember anything other than the things she's supposed to remember.
Christ.
It's EU in 50 years. Come on. Know your notes. Don't be a babe.
Come on, Rosemary. You got this.
Yeah, she does this sometimes. She got lost in her own note.
This is, your testimony on September 19th of 2016. Do you remember being, let me ask you this, right, to refresh your memory. Can you please read line, this is page 51, lines 7 through 25. Can you read that to yourself, please?
This is not a
Doctor?
good look on her. She got her gangster chain back on.
Oh gosh, I love that. I love that little outfit.
I liked it more with a colorful jacket to kind of set it off.
I know, but she's got like a cool shirt underneath.
Yeah. You watched this yesterday when you didn't remember a thing either. Yeah. The clock is so annoying because it flickers in
Doctor, does that refresh your memory as to whether or not you had previously testified that you got these reports about a week before you first testified on March 1st of 2013?
That's what I said then, yes.
Okay.
Maybe it's just the collar that's fun, not her
And
undershirt.
so about a week before you first testified, you actually saw the reports of these 4 individuals, is that right?
Yeah, she's having a
Well,
bad hair day.
That time you're speaking about was in 2013. I
That's
retired
point today.
2011. In between that time and before I retired, the 9 or 10 months beforehand, I'm sure there were many discussions with the police.
Yes, Your
And,
Honor.
I'm sorry.
She's non-responsive.
Which part?
All of it.
You were asked if you've got it a week before, and then there's a lot of discussion, and I retired, and
I think the objection is untimely. I think that I don't see a basis for striking her answer. She's trying to explain.
Yes, what are you seeing?
I'm biased because normally my starting point is that the state has the bigger burden. They have to prove it. And yeah, smile to the jury, you old hack. But every witness has had exceptionally memory loss, just as the defense takes over.
I know.
And this
Annoying.
this lady got the same questions yesterday.
She had time to think about this and reevaluate what she. Okay, let me get this together. And she didn't.
And yeah, she yesterday she read exactly the same page that she got the reports the day before, and then she gets into, well, I retired 2 years before, and there was some discussions, and where she was going with that, it seems as old I nerd, it's wishy-washy. It's and yes, and this, remember, this is the 4th trial in this case, the 4th. And because they had to throw out the paint expert, now they are heavily relying on this woman to set the time of death by rigor mortis, by the rigor of the body. But all her testimony has been, well, I was told that it was quite stiff. Did you test it? Yeah, I saw it a week later in the morgue. Why did you see it a week later? Because they needed it for crime scene investigation. You don't leave the body at the crime scene for a couple of days. you get the pictures and then you move the body, because as she said, you can't take the temperature at the crime scene because that could hinder some discovery, because there would be some new trauma to the body. Yeah, but you don't leave a body lying in a room for
Yeah.
another day, because
Well,
then the decomposition set in.
Investigation. Like, that's the stupidest answer I've ever heard. They need it for the crime investigation, so I don't get it right away. Usually we don't get it right away. What? That makes no sense.
Yeah.
Is it your first day on the job, ma'am?
I don't know. I got some. Did I lose connection to Rumble? I don't know what happened. This is live. Rumble says it's not live. I don't know. Stupid. It's just annoying because when I go to it messed something up. So now, sorry if people watch. You can't hear me because it's on Rumble. That's no longer receiving the signal. But I don't know why. So I don't know who you're asking if she's wearing pink. This lady isn't. She's looking like the font's just not as cool.
Right. Members of the jury, I'm going to sustain this witness's last answer to the last question, and I'm going to strike that answer, so you should disregard it. Attorney Piccio.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh, she's trying to
So let me ask you again.
seem friendly to the jury.
You refresh your memory that you never read the reports from the two first responders or the two police officers who responded that morning until
Now
a week
Rumble is back.
before
I don't know.
the first time you testified in this case, which would
Thank
have
you,
been,
Square Bob, for looking on Rumble.
the testimony would have been on
Before
March
it
1st,
just have a hiccup.
2013.
Thank you
Is that
so
right?
much for checking for me.
I remember saying that I'd gotten reports a week before the trial, but
That's it. That's all I want.
fine.
Now, in terms of your testimony about relying on the first responders, the two paramedics weren't certified death investigators, is that right?
I don't know.
Probably not.
So you don't even know if they were certified death investigators?
Well, certified death
No, just
investigators.
answer my question. Do you know as you sit here today, whether or not the two paramedics were certified death investigators?
I don't know.
Then how do you take their information and, ma'am,
And as you sit here today,
go back to Florida.
with respect to your time of
Go towards the light.
death determination, your testimony that you base that on descriptions from the first responders,
Hey, Dirk.
and you made that opinion, that 6 to 8 hour window.
Hi,
Before you
Dirk.
ever saw the reports, because you didn't see the reports till May of 2013, is that right?
No.
What?
It's not right, you didn't see the reports till May of 2013?
Correct. I don't know. I may have seen them sooner.
Well, didn't you just,
You just testified.
Ma'am.
you said it was May of 2000, oh, sorry. that you
Morning,
didn't
Farrell.
Look at those reports till a week before you
Farrell.
first testified in March 1st of 2013?
In 2013, a week before the trial, I received the
Yes, you
reports also.
Oh
Yes.
my God.
Also, then
Hold on.
when did you get them before that?
What's the objection? It's non-responsive. I mean, she just repeated.
No, Judge, can we see?
Sure.
This witness is such an
She's
idiot.
an idiot.
And it seems like, why don't you just say it? Yeah, I don't remember, but according to my previous testimony, yeah, I saw it a week before. But she don't want to come off as incompetent because she relied on her friend, the lead investigator, who's not allowed to testify. Look at this rolling her eyes.
Did she really? Yeah, she's got that little face. I see it.
Oh, that's the wrong way to put it.
Oh, yeah. Ma'am. She is asking you straightforward questions and you can't even answer them. Quit
Can't
rolling
answer.
your eyes at Miss Rosemary before I come down there.
The hoops are about to come off,
Yeah, I'm
and,
gonna break these hoops
and
off.
you're throwing your wig.
I will.
Now it's party time.
I don't have one, but I'll try.
Yeah.
All right, members of the jury, we got kind of a late start. We normally take a break mid-morning. We're going to take a break, but it's going to be a shorter break. So it's just about 10 minutes, and then we'll conclude with this witness.
Oh man.
Yeah. She went to Florida, but Florida didn't. Even the Gators wouldn't take her.
Oh my god. Like, what is wrong with this lady? Stop.
She
being
just
so-
seems like an a-hole.
She
She could just say, I don't remember. That's perfectly fine to not remember a 13-year-old case.
Yeah,
And-
you would look a lot less sleazy if you did.
And if you see her energy level has dropped,
Your Honor, just for the record, neither ADA school nor myself said a single word to Dr. Richmond during the break.
Okay, thank you.
but someone else did.
Thank you.
Yeah, Jamie is kind of a bad influence. I try to make her better.
Hey, I'm here.
Yeah, but you're
I'm
always here
suffering
because
though.
you're a lovely lady.
Yeah.
I'm just happy whenever Farrell shows up before. Normally she doesn't get out of bed till noon.
That was rough, Farrell. Oh, I don't know if I can do that anymore. God.
Everyone is messed up except the lady who's closest to death. We will be looking into the hearing tomorrow at Stab Your Day. Yeah, we got the Whitmer verdict is in. Nicholas is gonna cover it at 1.
Actually, he went
20
live early, so I put it in the Discord though. But yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to see the verdict, you can go to Nicholas Starro Trial Watch. He's gonna restream it. Yeah, I hate it. Why don't you just try to be open and honest? And again, say, I don't remember. It's okay. As I have said many times, it's better to say I don't remember. And then
You may.
Rosemary is going to say, you testified to this earlier. Well, I don't remember today.
Before we broke for the morning break, I was asking you some questions about your reliance on the information from the paramedics that responded to the scene, the 2 paramedics and the 2 police officers as first responders. Do you know those questions?
I don't remember the question, but I remember you were asking about it, yes.
Okay. And is it fair to say that when you previously testified on March 1st of 2013, you were asked a question, it's on page 155. At some point, did you actually read them, the reports, or have them read to you? Do you remember your answer being, yes, at some point I read them?
Okay, yes.
Okay. And the next question being, do you know when that was? And the answer being, I think it was last week, meaning a week before March 1st, 2013.
Yes, I remember that.
Okay. And then the next question being, prior to that, you had not seen them to your knowledge. And your answer, to my knowledge, I did not see the actual reports, no. that sound right?
Yes,
And then the next question, and you had the information contained in those reports relayed to you from someone else prior to actually seeing them. And your answer was yes. Descriptions of what they saw at the scene, as far as the body were given to me. Do you remember that?
no, but I believe that it's in there.
This is lines 13 through 17 on page 155. Can you just read 13 to 17 to yourself, please?
Do I like that floral
I like
color
a
on her?
pop of color
But
with that gold chain and that.
And Dr. Richmond, did that refresh your memory as to when you were asked the question back on March 1st of 2013? About you had information contained in those reports relayed to you from someone else prior to actually seeing them. Your answer was yes. Descriptions of what they saw as far as the body were given to me.
Yes,
Okay. And the next question, those descriptions came from Trooper McGarrigan. And your answer, yes. Is that right?
yes.
I don't have anything further.
oh, not as good as I hope, but probably they're gonna do a lot with their medical witness.
May I, Your
You may.
Yeah.
I never tried 4 roses.
Doctor, when you were eventually given
Sup,
physical
Lefty?
paper copies of those reports, was there anything in there different than what you'd already been told?
No,
Thank you.
And then, Fred.
Okay, thank you. We step down.
Yeah, I think they probably have somebody then that'll just rip her all of it.
Yeah, say it's totally unreliable to rely only on touch and feel and stuff like that.
And what somebody told you.
Yeah. Yet. Oh, they're going to another sidebar.
Morning, Lefty.
Yeah, it's not a good idea to make the old lady cry, but I think she got over that. This old lady really didn't know anything. She only knew what she's supposed to know, and you can use that in the closing. That she had no first-hand knowledge, and she relied totally on hearsay from another person. And then there was a confirmation bias when she read the report. She didn't verify it in any other way. So and this guy called her on the night of the murder, said, totally hypothetical, how long would it take for a cold as ice and stiff as a board body to get like that? 6 to 8 hours. What did you base that on? I don't know. It's so stupid that this testimony.
And then she didn't even see the body for like 6 days.
Yeah. I have seen it, but it's always the cheap stuff, so I don't buy it. Sometimes it's really great that we're behind because nothing much is happening. We're live now. A new sidebar. Okay. Well, Stephanie, yeah, I would, but you're gonna bring on your own medical expert who will gonna testify that without knowing the core temperature of the body, you can't make any determination of that kind. It seems weird that she didn't. No one at the crime scene gave any. What would you say? how you tested the rigor was just he touched her hand and could feel it was stiff and quite stiff.
Quite.
That's not a subjective way of doing it. It's objective. I don't know. I don't know English. And
But
then
it's all
this
their
expert,
Their perception.
yeah, it's perception. Everything is based on perception. It's not based on facts. And their expert will say, yeah, well, you should jam a thermometer in the liver and test the core temperature of the body and the room and the floor it's lying on, and you have to factor in all of these things. And none of it. I watched all the reports. None of that was done in the reports. And then the state is going to say, well, how many autopsies have you done? How many murder scenes have you investigated? Are you even an expert? Are you even a doctor? And with Mrs. Porcupine, Miss Porcupine, I'm pretty sure their expert is a top level expert. And we have seen it in so many cases. It will be the usual. How much are you paid to sit here? How many cases has you testified for the defense and stuff like that? But she came off as totally unreliable. And maybe it's my bias, but I feel this witness and every other witness in this case, all 5 of them now, have seemed like they don't even remember the case. They know enough to answer the prosecution, which makes them seem kind of coached. And whenever Rosemary gets to them, she said, "Do you remember? I don't remember. Oh, read this. Oh, now I remember." Instead of just saying, "I probably testified to that, but I'm not sure." So you don't seem as you're trying to hide it. And that's I don't like when they play these kind of games. It annoys me that just be open and honest about it. Just say, well, play both sides fair. I know that as a police officer, you might be biased against the defendant, but still try and be fair. And I have done I don't know how many cases, and of course sometimes you have a police officer who might have something. You can feel he is not maybe not the biggest fan of the defendant if the defendant is one he had fought with or I don't know been threatening him or stuff like that. But normally they're pretty cool. The police officers we get and are quite to the matter. And I don't know if because the trials I tend to be a layman on is a maximum sentence of 4 years. So it's not the worst cases, but even in my murder case, the police officer was really subjective and told us about what happened. Nothing didn't try to paint the picture worse when it was the prosecution asking and try to hide anything when it was the defense. I don't understand why you would like to do that. It just again, as a Dane, we trust our system. An American, I know you're brought up not to trust your system, but if the system seems like it's trying to hide things for you, it just strengthens your distrust in the government. I
Yeah.
can't understand why they don't just play both sides even. And this, I don't remember. And then she proves that you said it. It just makes you look like an idiot, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
And does it change anything? Did you say you had the report a week before? I retired and we had some conversation. Just say yes, because you read the same exact paragraph yesterday. Just say yes. I remember that I testified to that. It doesn't change anything. Rosemary is going to kill you anyway.
She is.
It's because it's just stupid. It makes you look like you're kind of, as the French would say, you're kind of late or retardé. So it's I don't get it. Why not just testify? And again, everyone. She was asked the same questions in the voir dire yesterday, so she knows this question was coming, and she could just say, "Yes, I know. I testified to that earlier." And then Rosemary would have asked, and you relied on before that you relied on the information you got from Trooper McGarren. Yes. It would have taken 2 seconds and we had been going on. But now we had to spend 10 minutes arguing. That's why I like covering cases, because and that's why I got into watching American cases, because it's a very different system than we have in Denmark. First of all, we always put the defendant on as the first thing, so he can explain everything, and then it's up to the state to pick at of his explanation. And of course, you have the right not to say anything also in Denmark, but we turn it around, so we know his side of the story, and then it's up to the state and try and prove his story wrong. And we don't have all of these theatrics. Maybe in the higher court, I haven't done those. I only done what's called city courts in Denmark, and that's normally you don't go to those if you're getting something above 4 years. I do have cases that have gotten more than that, because you can choose to go to a city court instead of going to the higher court. But again, watching American trials, I started out watching I believe I watched the Rittenhouse, the Halderson, the Murdaugh, JDAH, and then I started covering my own. And I see the same thing all the way through. The state protects the state. Why don't you build a case that's strong enough that you can seem open to both sides? It makes your witnesses look weak when they're sitting there and are shifty and have to be forced to give the answer. Just give it.
Yep.
And again, the jurors need to be with the program as spot the malarkey, but again, the American system is way different from the Danish. It doesn't help that the mainstream media always spins the coverage. No, and that's the big problem in most cases, is the lead-in to the case is Cara Rintala killed her wife down in them basement, and she did it like this, she did it like that, and now this case has been going on. The murder happened 13 years ago. So everyone have heard these negative things, and that's why it was really hard to see the jury.
We can bring them back.
But as a juror in Denmark, I'm elected for 4 years at the time, so I kind of get into knowing how the system works. But in America, you just pulled in off the street and said, sit here for 1 day, 5 weeks, you don't know. And that's why I always say, when people say, how do I get out of jury duty? Please don't, because if you're on trial, you want a jury filled with people like us who are watching trials and saying, oh, this seems shifty, instead of people sitting there thinking, oh, could I just get my Sudoku and my Dr. Pepper? And yeah, she's guilty because the state said so.
Yeah. They wouldn't have arrested her if they didn't have anything on her. That's what I hear a lot.
Yeah, and again, they wouldn't bring a case if you're not sure.
Yeah.
Well, people get off all the time, but we have also seen a case so built with circumstantial evidence that it makes my blood boil to think about the Zachariah Anderson case. The way they lied, and yeah, it's and that's why I follow cases, to see all of the shenanigans. And if you're new here, I ramble a lot as well and make drawings.
Yeah. Farrell, he made a new one. You better show her.
No, and I have to switch the flip. Flip the switch.
Oh, you got it. Isn't that amazing? Oh my
put-
God.
I might have something wrong inside my head,
No.
but as long as I'm not tested,
Are
no one can tell.
perfect.
Members of the jury, I'm sorry to keep sending you back and bringing you back. I guess you're getting your steps in, thanks to me. So
What's happening?
the attorneys and I had to discuss a sort of a late breaking kind of scheduling problem. And it's not their fault, it's really more my fault, but as a result, we have to break early today. By early, I mean now. So
Oh.
I'm going to release you
Jamie,
today.
what are we gonna do?
I'll ask you to be back Monday at 9 o'clock. Once again, please do not discuss this case with anyone, including each other.
Jamie, so I won't get to see you for 8 hours today.
I
Research or
know.
investigation. Please have no
Crazy.
contact with, or avoid contact rather, with any of the participants in this matter, and again, actively.
Yeah, if I
avoid,
just could, I think
any
I could
and all
make
media accounts concerning
an online store, maybe price them extremely high, like $30 for a cup or something.
Yeah, like other people do.
I don't know if anyone other people do that, but it could be a money maker for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Rowski, it's so hard to laminate a whiteboard. Well, what are we gonna do? Now we have time. I can get some sleep today. I'm gonna find some other channel to go on and pester them for a bit. Oh, I could do if I do my. Do you have anything? Should we jump on the Cara Read after I make my dinner and eat a bit, and then we could do? How long is the Cara Read? Is it online? Then we could do that in the afternoon if you want to have fun. Or do
Yeah.
you want to go and
This is
relax?
only like an hour and 50 minutes, so that's not bad.
So we could do that at maybe 1:30. What time? It's 12 now.
Yeah, like
List of
sure.
I think the expert is live.
parts of the transcript that I should be.
And here's Caitlin comment, and Iris is on
Is there
again.
a written motion or?
There is not that.
Okay. So, two things. Is this something we can at least begin to address this afternoon? It's noon. If we come back at say 2 o'clock, would that give the party, or give the Commonwealth rather, enough time to at least review the portions that are at issue?
I'm hoping so, Your Honor. Again, we've been in session since I got the list.
I understand this is, I
Yes.
know it's through no fault of your own, and if you come back and you say, I need more time, then you'll get it, but I'm just, I have no idea. And all I'm gonna do between now and then is just read this. I understand that I may need to watch it, but I may be able to narrow it down just based on the content, you know, without actually seeing it.
What?
So if I were to order one or more redactions, what does that mean in terms of
What has come in?
delay? And I mean,
Oh.
just how long would it take to further redact this exhibit?
I do expect we'd be able to do that for Monday, Your Honor. If they were ordered today, we would be able to do that.
Okay.
Oh, so
we'll see if
it wasn't because of him,
there isn't enough time for either you to make.
but he just said it to not prejudice
argument
against
or for
anything.
me
Yeah.
to decide, do we have other witnesses who could be on deck for Monday?
We do.
Okay, so we'll table that for now. So can we be back at 2 o'clock? To see whether we can at least, if not address, at least begin to address or narrow the issues here.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. See you at 2 o'clock.
Thank you.
Well,
Court all rise, please. Court stands at recess.
schedule duty, schedule issues. What's up? It seems like there's some evidence that needs to be redacted, and as she's the one defending it or talking about how long it would take, it seems like it's something the prosecution has brought in that the defense might or the judge might want to have redacted. Maybe they forgot to cut out a bit here and there to. It happens, and it might be really useful to prejudice the jury. I don't know. What do I know? It seems weird. But Jamie, should we jump on at 1:30?
Yeah, let's do that.
And then we can do the Karen Reed, and if they go live back, so we can jump back on this one and hear what they're arguing about.
Sure.
And everyone else, please, if you so like, go and visit the most interesting man on the YouTubes, the coolest guy on YouTube, the expert. And if you go there, please just call it a Baker raid, because I can't send you, but if you follow this link, he is in verdict watch in the Ozone case. It's a guy who unalived the police officer, and he's on verdict watch. He has Irish, who's often in my chat, nice lady, and Caitlin, what's her name? Caitlin comments. Also a bundle of joy and a bundle of smiles. So go pester them and just for the fun of it, call it a Baker raid. So I feel like I'm important on the YouTubes. Else, me and Jamie will be doing the Karen Reed this afternoon at 1:30. So I have 90 minutes to get some food, and I don't have to run like yesterday.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much for watching. And if they pick this up again at 2, then we will be live and can switch over. Remember, Baker raid at the expert. Thank you so much for showing up. See you later.
Bye.